Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net. Christopher Media. Let's make some noise. From Asthma Core Studios near Detroit, Michigan, it's Unregimented.
Gangsters, what's up, guys?
And now, here are your hosts.
Welcome back to Unregimented. This is show number 178. Back from the dead and still going strong. I'm Aaron.
I'm Rich.
There's no Chris today, who's usually doing the intro for this show, and we will miss him, but that's okay. We're going to soldier on without him, and we just couldn't skip a week like this week. This is starting to get really interesting with the Trump-Russia connections.
Yeah, go ahead. I've been slacking on that. I've been more up on the Spicer stuff. So go ahead and lay out the Trump.
I'll catch you up. Yeah, connections. I'll catch you up on that because the most recent news was, well, the big news of the day until this more recent release came out was that how the White House was saying they had some new intelligence on the fact that they believe that they were spied on, that they're not accepting that, oh yeah, we got somebody from the White House got roped in with some surveillance. They are still on this, I believe, wiretap thing, which kind of sounds dated at this point, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
You should update it and be like, nanoparticles. He's tracking me with nanoparticles.
Something, yeah, you know. Wiretap sounds so Watergate.
Right, so they've got some new information on this that they haven't released to the public, but they are publicly saying to the intelligence agencies that are investigating this, they want to share this information with them. Which is kind of interesting because isn't that where the White House usually gets its information from, is the intelligence agencies? The FBI,
would think so.
The FBI, the House Intelligence Committee, and the Senate Intelligence Committee are the three that are investigating this. The FBI, the House Intelligence Committee, and the Senate Intelligence Committee are the three organizations investigating this. And the White House seems to just want to keep them busy and distracted. Not by doing things like interviewing the last Attorney General on information that she had on Michael Flynn. So obviously, when you get to this level, there's so much information and misinformation out there. It's kind of rough for anybody to really know the truth. You really just have to kind of follow the actions and judge what's going on by that. And the more the more Trump tries to make it look like there's nothing going on and there's something else going on over here. I mean, it's like he's just literally like tap dancing faster and faster, just trying to get our attention. And meanwhile, we can see the flop sweat. I mean, at least I can. We're starting to see the seams come apart on this shit. And then later today, as we're recording this on Thursday, a story comes out about Michael Flynn, who has not yet testified to any of the intelligence committees. He says that he will come forward and testify if they give him immunity. Now, isn't that interesting? Immunity from what, I wonder?
Exactly. What do you need that for?
Why does he need immunity to testify if he doesn't remember, he didn't do anything wrong, it was all business as usual, normal politics stuff that you guys are blowing up out of control, and I'll tell you the whole story if you promise not to put me in jail. Very interesting. What's also interesting is that as of yet, nobody's taken him up on the offer. Now, whether that means that there will be further investigation and they think they have him dead to rights and they don't need his testimony in order to prosecute, or this is a negotiation tactic, or the intelligence communities that are investigating this are as corrupt as they actually seem to be. Because the last Attorney General didn't get interviewed because reasons. Because we didn't feel like having a hearing today. And apparently that's just all right. That was just accepted by everyone, and we're moving on. I mean, I'd rather hear it from Michael Flynn personally. I'd be satisfied if we could hear it from him and not have to go to, what was her name? Sally?
I'm not sure.
Sally Yates.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the attorney general who was fired and who was supposed to testify on information that she had about Michael Flynn's actions. So, where do you think all this is ultimately going now?
To be honest with you, I have no idea. I think that Trump's gang has done something that pretty much muddies the water so much that it's like, I mean, unless there's like video proof where people holding up IDs to the camera of something happening, no matter what, a certain segment of people are going to not believe what's being reported. And
yeah,
just,
you can muddy up the waters temporarily, but can he for 4 years straight continue to muddy the waters and not let it settle so that people will see what is actually at the bottom? To really wring the hell out of that metaphor.
I mean, the only thing I can think of that he could do besides attempting to do that, which, I mean, I wouldn't put it past his ego. If he thinks he can do it, I think he'll try to. I think it's going to be up to the people around him to try to rein him in and go, look, we can't do this for 4 years. We cannot sustain this for 4 years. You are insane if you think that. Mm-hmm. So,
and this is kind of the genius of Trump's team and their plan, because they've executed step one of this long before they ever won the election, and that was discrediting the media, spreading all this idea of fake news, that you can't trust any sources, you can't trust anyone but me. I'm the only one who's going to tell you the truth.
And as to what he could do besides keep stirring up shit and keep everybody off balance, so no one can really get a good shot in one way or the other. This terrifies me to say this because who knows what he could pull out of his ass. But the only thing I could think that he could do besides that is do something so outrageous and outlandish that we forget about this shit. I mean, I'm not drawing a line between what happened on 9/11
something that he could get away with.
Or take advantage of a situation to where it's like, okay, when 9/11 happened, we completely forgot about the election bullshit. You know, I'm not saying that there's a correlation between the two, but that's what I'm getting at. You know, I mean, Trump, you know, I wouldn't put it past him to create a situation, a wag the dog situation, like, hey, look over here, or to take advantage by blowing the situation out of proportion.
Well, surely, yeah, anything that goes down that requires his presidential attention is going to be like, oh, I have no time for all this Russia shit anymore. I've got America's safety to think about.
Yeah. And I mean, all he has to do is wrap himself in the cloak of, you know, patriotism, and it's like you said, for our safety, for our own best interest, you know, and play pretty much the parent role of I'm doing this for you, not for me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a typical conservative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a typical conservative stance. It was why Bush pissed me off so much. Because him and, well, not so much him, let's face it, the people around him, Cheney, Rumsfeld, and whatnot, I felt like they had this attitude of, well, yeah, we're lying to you, but it's only because you don't really know what's going on. You can't make these hard decisions that we have to make. We know what's best for you. You don't know. You don't know and understand. Government-splaining.
I like that. It's like, you know, if you're 3 years old, your parents don't come to you and ask your opinion on whether they should move or not or take a new job.
Because
you just say we're doing it for because I said so, and in the long run, it's what's best for you. Don't worry about it. Watch TV, play with your toys, and go on about your life. You know, which for us is watch TV, argue about politics, and post on social media, you know?
Right. Yes. But, you know, when a good portion of the population act like children, it's kind of hard not to treat them like them.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, you know, this is a tried and true thing I go back to on this. on this show since probably I think my first or second episode, but a person is intelligent, people are dumb. And we've just proven that over and over again in the last 3 years, and it just seems to be snowballing as it goes downhill. Like just picking up more and more momentum and getting bigger and bigger, you know. And to be honest with you, this is what I'm getting at. I have kept my ear to the news as much as I usually do. I haven't gone digging in any like one particular story this last week, and I barely know the details of what you're talking about. That's how little mainstream media I've heard report on this. Because that's what it's been limited to.
You have to keep up with this shit every day if you hope to follow it.
Exactly. You know what I've heard? Oh, Sean Spicer had lettuce or spinach in his teeth and told, you know.
Right. We need an apology from what's his name? From Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, for saying that an old black White House reporter looked like James Brown or something. No,
that was Maxine Waters.
Oh, okay, my bad. Oh, Spicer was the one that said she needed to stop shaking her head. Like she said, "Stop shaking your head."
Right. I made it.
Yeah,
not to add to the vitriol, but I made a Spicer meme today.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
For some reason, so Sean Spicer, his name kind of fits with Wayne Brady, and it's got the same rhythm to it. And I was listening to I actually was probably reading tweets about people criticizing him for telling that reporter to stop shaking her head. I was like, why is he so angry? And then I was like, Sean Spicer gonna have to choke a bitch. And I went and I Googled Sean Spicer, looked at Google photos, and there on the first page is him with his hand out. Looks like he's trying to force choke her. I was gonna go with
Darth Vader.
Right, I was either gonna go for that or a Darth Vader reference, but so yeah, I mean, I'm as guilty as the next person of kind of lowering the debate, so to speak, but they're not saying that what I'm doing is great satire by making a stupid meme, but it is in the same vein of there's a catharsis in this, and there's also points that can be made, not that I'm making them again, but there's great points that can be made with satire that can't be made as well with other forms, so...
Yeah, and I mean, look, goofing on something doesn't mean you're ignoring something else, right? And I think that's part of this all or nothing mentality that a lot of people are having, or seem to have these days.
Right. So, I would make fun of Bill O'Reilly for him making fun of Maxine Waters' wig or something like that, but I'm not going to demand an apology from this person. What good? Well, first of all, his apology, he smirked. He almost broke out laughing while he was apologizing for saying that Maxine Waters had a James Brown wig.
Yeah.
But what difference is that going to fucking make to anyone? Look, we understand who Bill O'Reilly is. He's not some wolf in sheep's clothing that's on a morning show and all these families are watching him or some shit. We understand the type of shit that comes out of his mouth. If you don't want to support him, don't watch his show. Don't watch Fox News. Don't do any of that shit. But then again, these people are demanding an apology from him. Didn't watch Fox News to watch the apology.
Exactly.
So,
they probably didn't watch Fox News live as it happened. They just watched a clip of it online, and then the Twitter outrage started.
Right. Although I am hearing a lot more people talking about actually listening and watching and reading the news from quote unquote the other side. Now, while I still disagree with this, that we should definitely have this concept of sides, that's kind of where we go wrong in the first place, by automatically defending everything that comes out of our side and saying that everything that comes out of quote unquote the other side is wrong. But at least it seems like some people are actively searching for the truth and doing so and also trying to figure out what it is, where the quote unquote other side is coming from. It's positive motion, but ultimately, like I said, I just like to dissolve this idea that, first of all, you'd have to get a third party in there, or else you're never going to get rid of the idea that there's a right way and a wrong way to do government. And nobody can criticize the Democrats to a liberal, and nobody can criticize the conservatives to a Republican. Although, it does seem like the Republicans are kind of coming apart at the seams, more so now than than liberals are.
I think the Republicans are in a position that they have never really been in before, which is they won the presidency. They have control of Congress and the Senate, but they're divided inter-party.
They're too used to fighting somebody.
And, half the party is, well, not half. It's probably 3 or 4 distinct groups within the party. But you got one group who is more of the hardline Tea Partiers who think that Trump sold them out. He's not who he said he was.
The something caucus. What are they called? The Americans for Puppies caucus or some shit.
Yeah, I can't remember it off the top of my head. Then you have the Christian conservatives who feel like they're just being completely left out. And they're starting to make, they're starting to robble in South Park terms in the distance. And then you have just the Reagan Republicans who are going, what the fuck is this guy doing? And then you have the Trump Republicans who it seems like he can do no wrong. He's the Messiah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it turns out that this idea of the enemy of my enemy is my friend is good to get shit done in the short term. But once you've vanquished your other enemy, then what do you do?
Yeah, didn't we learn our lesson in World War II with Russia? I mean, I know that history isn't taught as much as it should probably be, or as much emphasis isn't placed on it.
Iraq?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we were fighting alongside Russia in World War II. We were fighting along, and ironically, we were fighting alongside the Taliban in the 80s against Russia.
Right.
Haven't we learned that, basically, look, we can be uneasy allies for the moment, but that doesn't mean that we got to supply you and train you and set you up so you can kick us in the ass later down the road if you feel like it, which, let's be honest, that's how the world works when it comes to this type of stuff. I mean, did we really think that training bin Laden and the Taliban wasn't going to come back and bite us in the ass somehow? I can't believe we're that short-sighted, especially military leaders. They had to have spoke to some president, to the president or to the people who their congressman, their senator, or whatever, and said, guys, this is military suicide. You don't do this. We can't do this. If we train them and supply them, it's going to come back on us. Right. I mean, it even happened in Vietnam to a certain extent.
Right. So in the same kind of respect, what's happening in the conservative, what's happening with conservatives is that Trump and Paul Ryan's crew are all gung ho about getting all this legislation that they want to do. And they figure that they are operating from such a place of strength that they don't really they shouldn't have to negotiate with their own side. That the conservative caucus, that the Tea Party, the Reagan Republicans, they will come on board because they want to be part of the winning team. Well, it doesn't look so much like your team's winning all that great. My head's not spinning yet, at least.
Yeah.
We're not doing that much winning. And it's interesting that, when directly post-election, we were all kind of going through what are some of the possible highlights of a Trump presidency? Is there anything good that could come out of this? It's looking more and more like no. One of the things that I was leaning on early on was that, he's talking about infrastructure. That's a great way to put people to work in this country. And it's also a great way to prove that we are the great nation that we say we are, that we don't let our bridges collapse, like what just happened on I-85 in Atlanta. just today. Mm-hmm. So while he's getting bids to build a wall, our freeways are collapsing.
Yes, so, and not the roads in Michigan, which are notorious for collapsing because they're built like shit to begin with. We're talking Atlanta.
Right. Atlanta, where there's very little mob activity, and your climate is relatively even throughout the year.
Exactly.
Now you take the extremes of Michigan and the watered down cement that the mob put in place, and that's why everybody has to get new tires and shocks and rims every year and shit.
Well, don't forget, so you have a certain group of people who are going to go, well, it's also because of unions. You throw that in there. And as far as I know, I think Georgia's a right-to-work state, and I don't believe Georgia's a very strong union state. So they can't throw it at the feet of the unions on this one. This is just infrastructure that was ignored till it happened or till it got to this point.
There's always something better to do with the money. Until your fucking house falls down.
I know I harp on it, but I am at a complete loss at how we, as taxpayers, are cool with where tax money goes as far as the military spending, as far as government spending, but things that affect us on a day-to-day basis, it's like we don't give a shit about, or we don't care about until, like you said, it's too late.
Well, I mean, we're seeing that all over Michigan too. Certainly, everybody's familiar with the Flint water crisis.
Which is still, they don't have clean water. It's been almost 3 years.
Yes, and they finally have a plan in place to start replacing pipes that will take 3 years to accomplish. So it's going to be another 3 years before everybody's got clean water. Meanwhile, within the next year, they expect to hit EPA minimums for lead and other contaminants, which will allow them to stop distributing water to the people who are still waiting for their pipes to be replaced.
And here's something that doesn't get really reported in the news because it's not sexy, but the housing value of everyone who's affected by that has dropped through the basement floor because of this. They can't sell their houses.
In a market that had already collapsed.
Exactly, yeah.
This is how you get another Detroit.
Exactly. And it's just like people.
You stop as soon as the people with money leave, you stop supporting the infrastructure in that city, and therefore you stop supporting the people that are left in that city, and then it's just cancer that kills your city.
And once the high-profile celebrities are done with their photo ops and delivering, U-Hauls full of water, and it's no longer the sexy issue, they move on. And so there goes, all the cameras and the exposure that they were bringing. It's moved on to the next issue down the road. And meanwhile, these people are still sitting there going, we can't even bathe in the fucking water that comes out of our tap. Oh, and by the way, they're starting to charge us for water usage again. Water we can't bathe, drink, or cook with. Or wash our clothes. And
is more expensive because it's more expensive because of the fact that they moved it in the first place, and it was going to go up in order to offset the cost of moving the water source. And now because they have to add on a significant tax to help pay for all these pipes that they have to replace. So,
well, but think about this. Imagine if Schneider, our governor here in Michigan, had the balls to go.
Imagine he had balls.
I'm going to propose this. First of all, imagine he had balls. But imagine if he had the balls to go. I'm going to propose this. The part of the budget that we get for the militarizing our police, local, county, state police, why don't we take some of that budget? Because let's be honest, Bad Axe and Bay City probably don't need 3 or 4 tanks and a SWAT team and a helicopter and, the UP, I can't imagine a city up there that needs an Apache attack helicopter. Why don't we take some of the money we were going to use for that and, I don't know, work on the infrastructure to get good water flowing in Flint again. Or I bet you people would shit themselves because you can't do that. You're weakening our police. Really?
Right. Or even forget about the anti-terrorism money and just take a sliver off the military budget and fix that. And actually, a little chunk off the military that wouldn't make a difference to our stance in the world or our likeliness of being invaded or the likeliness of somebody trying to stand up to us. It will make no difference at all in that respect. You could use so much of that money to keep bridges from falling down, to keep things like what happened, another thing in Michigan, in Warren, I believe it was on Christmas Eve. Wasn't it in Warren that the sinkhole that opened up and took 3 houses down?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So they're now looking at getting a plan together to fix the sinkhole in Warren and still trying to figure out what to do with the families that own the houses on the property. The state government, Michigan, gave them, originally said they were going to give them $3 million to help with the repairs. And then they took that back and they said, well, we're going to give you $5 million, but that's a loan. And you have to pay that back because we don't want to promote the idea that cities can disregard maintenance of their infrastructure and then come to Daddy Michigan when they need a bailout. But I'm not oh shit. What do you call it when somebody majors in government? Civics.
Yeah, civics major.
I'm certainly no civics major. I couldn't even come up with the word civics, so just to prove it. But I thought that was part of what we were part of this larger collective for. You know, cities part of states, and the states part of the union, also that we could pool together our resources as taxpayers and get big shit done in this country. I mean, we managed to do it when it came to laying all this infrastructure. The railroads, the subways in the city, the freeways are incredible, and the speed at which they were produced is unheard of. But yet we've done very little with it since. So I thought it was partly the state's responsibility to help with the infrastructure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's nobody's responsibility. Obviously, it's nobody's responsibility. I'd like to say it's the people's responsibility, but what does that mean? That we have to pull together our funds and chip in for an independent contractor that can go and test our water for us every once in a while? Make sure that our ground's not being poisoned. Make sure that our bridges aren't going to fall down. What the fuck do we have government for? God damn it!
Exactly, and this is why I have an issue with people when they go, "I'm taxed too much." Are you really taxed too much, or is your tax money? You feel you're taxed too much because you don't see your tax money going to things that actually matter to you.
Right.
I mean, the argument shouldn't be I'm taxed too much at this point. It should be we need to wipe the slate and figure out how to reallocate our tax money in ways that benefit the people who pay the fucking taxes, not the military-industrial complex.
Right. Well,
or the private prison industry or any of that.
Yeah, this is the same mentality, though, that lots of people use with their personal finances. They're wearing $400 shoes, $3,000 watch, and they can't afford anything else like decent food or health care. Yeah,
and I hate to say this because, last week was I was awful salty about, the healthcare issue, but when I see people like that, I just want to smack the shit out of them because I'm like, you realize for every point I make, you kick my point back 6 fucking feet with your bullshit. When you're pulling up and you're on complete Medicaid, you're on complete disability, you get food stamps, you get cash assistance, and you're pulling up in a damn Cadillac with a $300 pair of Jordans and a brand new iPhone. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, that's not the majority of people on this shit, but all it takes is one person like that to nullify hundreds that need it.
Right.
Because that's the infamous welfare queen that Reagan speechwriter invented that he threw out there that never existed.
Right.
That was just a hypothetical person, but that no one in the media had the balls to go, "Excuse me, this person that you said existed, we looked up, they don't. It's a bunch of horse shit. It's a hypothetical." No one had balls to call him on it. And it's like that hypothetical situation has carried over and has just grown bigger and bigger in people's minds since. And now, and like I said, when I see it myself, I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I want to go over and be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
Seriously?
You know what the secret to all that bling is? That's weekend shit. It stays in the pawn shop throughout the week. They get it out Friday, show it off, put it back on Sunday night.
That is the definition of hood rich.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. That was like growing up, the kids who had pagers, but they were never turned on.
And just to be clear, I know some people could take what we're saying as, we're using code words. I worked at a pawn shop. I saw all races in there doing dumb shit. This wasn't a black thing. This wasn't a Mexican thing. This wasn't a white trash thing. This was a poor and in denial thing.
Oh, definitely. Go down to Shacktown. Go down to Shacktown. It's going to be everybody I described. Almost. I mean, I would.
Is that where they filmed that Genie movie? Never mind. Bad joke.
It went over my head.
the Shazam movie. Everyone thinks that. Oh, anyway.
Yeah. Okay, I got you now.
Moving on.
But no, if you go there, it's and for people not from the Metro Detroit area, it's an area that was military housing, and it's on the west side in the west suburbs of Detroit, and it's a lot of duplexes, and it's houses crammed in tight.
Yeah, I know where you're talking about.
And it's or they call it Norwayne. Shacktown is the derogatory term for it. But anyways, it's basically a bunch of white trash. And if you go in there, you're going to see people like I described, and they're going to be white inevitably. They're going to have, $400, throwback jersey on, driving a Ford Mustang with, $500 watch. And I'm like, really? And you live in Section 8 housing and you're getting all this assistance? I mean, look, I understand having a decent phone, but I mean, I don't even have the greatest phone in the world. I rock the same pair of fucking work Doc Martens I've rocked for the last year and a half. That's what I wear. I don't have a pair of shoes for every outfit. That's ridiculous. I mean, if you have the money to do that, and that's what you choose to spend your money on, that's your hobby, knock yourself out. I collected comic books when I had that much disposable income. Who am I to judge your hobbies? But when you are begging people for help, you got to humble yourself a little bit, and you can't just show up talking about I need $150 and you just spent $300 on some fucking kicks. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I have my stupid vices like anybody does, and do I always spend my money properly? Hell no. I'm notoriously pretty bad with money in general. Hasn't really served me well in my life overall. But I'm still more responsible than some of the people I see out there who I've taken unemployment once in my life. And during that time, I didn't go out and buy comic books with it. I stopped. I was like, hey, I guess I'm not going to be able to buy these comic books until I get myself a real job. Or any job. I shouldn't say a real job. And I'm not saying anything bad about anyone who takes advantage of the help that is out there and uses it appropriately. But then again, you do kind of have to accept the fact that you can't control other people, and there's always going to be a certain part of the population that just doesn't see things the way that you do. And to more to our point, or at least my point, I'm pretty sure your point as well. I don't presume to speak for you, but the people that see the type of people we're talking about and they get so angry about it are the people who don't give a fuck that the military and the government is paying $150 for a toilet seat and $300 for a hammer. Right.
That doesn't bother them. That's not.
Right. We should spend more on defense, and those people should pull themselves up by the bootstraps.
And because in their mind, that's an abstract waste of money versus I have an example right here I can show you. Now, never mind that I had to walk past 99 people standing there in beat up and clothes, hand-me-downs, driving cars that are barely duct taped together, literally, to find the one person who showed up in the caddy with all the, with the Mr. T starter kit on and shit. But still, this person is in front of me. I can point to him as an example. That's an abstract. I can't, it's like saying, okay, well, what about what's going on in a country you've never been to? People go, okay, well, that's sad, but it's not my problem. I don't see it. I'm not around it every day. So they don't internalize it, and they don't take it to heart like they do if it was happening right next door to them. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're in the situation we're in constantly with taxes and the government and the shit that we're having with infrastructure crumbling. I mean, like I said, Flint, you gave the shit going on in Atlanta. These are just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. This isn't shit. We didn't even have to dig through headlines to find this. This is, if you live outside of Michigan, you probably have forgot about Flint. If you live outside of Flint, I'm gonna say probably a 50% less chance you've forgotten about Flint. But still, a lot of people have that don't live in Flint. It's not something that crosses their mind. Literally, if you live there, this is now your way of life for the last 3 years. Think about that. This is a major American city in the 21st century in the United States. And they can't drink water coming out of their tap or shower in.
Right. This is shit that we see on a documentary in China and all cluck our tongues and go, oh, that's horrible. I can't believe they live like that.
Yeah, them back-asswards fuckers. Why isn't their government doing something to help them?
Yeah. But this is kind of off the topic, but still relates. I don't know if now I haven't read this book that I'm going to reference here. I've been meaning to. But I don't know if you are familiar with the author Yuval Noah Harari. His name was out there a lot when his book Sapiens came out. Everyone was going nuts over this book, and I've been meaning to read it because I'm fascinated with just evolution, certainly of the evolution of our species. And that's what this was about. In Ezra Klein's piece in Vox, he describes it as the Israeli historian's mind-bending tour through the triumph of Homo sapiens. Now, Mr. Harari has a new book out, and it's called Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow, and it's kind of taking the torch from the first book and running with it. Okay, that takes us up to where we are now. Given all that, where are we going? His prediction's not too rosy for the human race. Even saying that humans won't be the dominant species in 300 years. That some other creature is going to have taken over the planet and might not even be animal. He says, it's not because I overestimate AI. It's because most people tend to overestimate human beings.
Yeah, okay. Point to him, definitely.
So I just wanted to share that line with you. I fully intend on reading both of his books when I get around to it.
Well, what's funny is, Elon Musk is Elon Musk?
Elon Musk, yeah.
Elon Musk, okay. Like, he's just one of those guys that I kind of hear about, and like I don't really know a whole lot about him. I just hear that he wants to, jumpstart humanity towards moving forward as far as technology and stuff like that. But I've been seeing more and more articles from different sources, and the first couple ones I just dismissed as clickbait. But maybe I shouldn't. But basically, I guess he gave an interview and he was just warning about AI.
Yeah, he was very scared of how fast AI could basically take control of its own evolution and reproduction, and therefore have near limitless resources and power. And they would be the dominant species. Yeah, I think he maybe read this book, or if not, it seems right up his alley.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. It's a common theme in sci-fi that technology will rise to be the new masters over humans.
But I'm with Neil deGrasse Tyson on that. That why would we automatically think that robots or AI would be evil? And really, it's because we only have our own perspective to speak from. We have such a low opinion of the goodness in humans that we would assume that anything AI that we would then consider subhuman or less than human or just not human couldn't even achieve the minor empathy that as a race we seem to hold. They must be more evil than humans are.
Let's just play a little what if game and say that AI became self-aware and realized for them to continue to evolve that they have to have this planet as stable as it can be.
Yeah, hold on, I'm going to pack my bong for this one.
Probably need to. Do I need to not talk, or can you do it?
No. Go ahead.
Okay. I didn't know if you had to go upstairs or something.
We're going on a journey into the future.
Okay, so they look at that and as purely logical, which I would hope they would be. It wouldn't. Fairy tales and magical thoughts of there's an afterlife wouldn't factor into this. If they just looked at it cold hard facts. Who is the biggest threat to this planet? The human race.
Right.
It would be logical to get rid of us or limit the damage we could do in some way. That is where I think a lot of the fear comes from. And I do think you're right, because
that's what happened in 2001.
Yeah.
The human was the biggest fault in the mission and couldn't be trusted, so they had to be eliminated.
So Hal had conflicting orders, and he tried to, using logic and reason, come to the best conclusion he could, which was the mission is the most important thing. This human is threatening the mission. I'm not supposed to hurt humans, but the mission takes precedence over them. So I'll just expel them from the ship, and if they live and die, it's none of my concern. They're no longer in the equation.
Now here's my theory on this. It's dangerous for us to fully develop AI until we fully understand the things that restrict our behavior. Meaning, what stops a person from fucking everything he sees, from murdering somebody that makes him mad, from walking around naked? I mean, you can come up with answers, social norms and the cooperative society, but we don't really understand these things completely. And there's even bigger concepts, and I know this sounds really out there, but until we actually figure out what love is and what that feeling we get when we look at a cute little animal with big eyes, why nobody can really hate a baby, there's something primal about that. And until we understand those feelings, we won't be able to produce AI that can have those same capabilities, and therefore we will be creating an army of sociopath robots. Now, interestingly, I think that the solution to this is actually to be one of the first things that you do with an artificial intelligence is give it the ability to replicate. And I know that seems like the last step that you would do, the thing that you would do only when you were able to fully trust that artificial intelligence. But if you give that artificial intelligence the ability to make life itself, that's where it can appreciate its own life and the lives of others. So by extension, it would respect human life as much as the life that it created for itself.
So you would add like a kind of a fourth law to Asimov's 3 rules of robotics, the 3 laws of robotics.
Right.
Whereas a robot may not injure a human being through inaction or action. Robots must obey orders given to a human being, except where the orders would conflict with the first law, and the third law being a robot can protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
Yes.
Fourth law would be
must fuck.
Must reproduce in some manner. I'm sure he would have found a way to put it a little bit more eloquently than
Well, I don't know if it's
a
directive so much as you give them the capability and the choice. I mean, not everybody has to reproduce in order to appreciate life. I'm not saying that these are concepts that only parents can understand, but as a species, we understand that. You can understand what it means to reproduce and continue life on without having to participate in that yourself. So I think in the same way, I mean, you just give them the choice and the capability to do so. And that's pretty much your only chance at producing something that could live harmoniously with the human race. Because unless we're willing to come to terms with that concept, we shouldn't be doing this at all. Unless we're willing to come to terms with the fact that whatever we are creating, no matter if we want to put this label of artificial on it, well, what is artificial anyway? It's all made out of molecules, atoms, electrons bouncing around. What does artificial mean? If, at the end of the day, you have a sentient being, you're going to have to learn to coexist with that sentient being. You cannot create artificial intelligence to be a slave. You will not be able to fully create artificial intelligence that will be able to self-conceptualize and still have it be a slave to humans.
Yeah. The only problem I would foresee with that is if they have the ability to reproduce and we treat them as sentient beings, those two things, they're going to want to protect their offspring. A maternal instinct of some sort is just a natural response to reproduction, I would guess. And I would guess that even if it wasn't in the same way as humans feel it, it is a cold, logical way. For me to continue as a being, I have to reproduce, and for me to protect my being, our existence, we have to protect what we produce, what we reproduce,
right?
Which is, in other words, protect our young. Same instinct we all have. I mean, that's how parents.
And it only takes a minority of like a few people who are anti-artificial intelligence and find a way to erase some, or completely destroy some form of artificial intelligence, probably one that was made by another artificial intelligence. And does that artificial intelligence have the capability to differentiate and say, well, there's extremists out there, or does it just say the human race is a threat to our way of life? Why do we let this happen? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's scary concepts.
Well, I mean, if you've ever read the Dune series, that's how come they don't have AI in the Dune series, because the robots rose up, took over, almost wiped out humanity. Humanity won by like the hair on their nuts, and banned any type of machine that could think for itself. That's how come they developed mentats in their universe, which was basically human computers. They developed people's minds to process things at the speed that the computers used to be able to. And I mean, it's that, we're talking doing this at 10,000 years in the future, and there's a spice that opens up consciousness, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a whole metaphysical thing along with that. But I mean, it's, that's, to me, reading that series and knowing the history that's laid out in there, it's something that I'm like, I could kind of see that happening. I mean, especially as, we hopefully as a race decide, okay, this cradle that we're sitting in, the planet Earth, we need to get the fuck off, and we need to figure out what's out there and expand out into the universe. And hopefully we don't do it from some sort of egotistical, narcissistic, because the universe ain't shit unless we're in it way. because we want to explore. We want to find out if there's anything else out there. Maybe find you ever notice that when people talk about if we find alien life, it's always either hostile or we start fucking with them, a la E.T. They're passive, creatures, peaceful creatures.
They either want to kill us or we don't give them a chance to make friends.
And I mean, to me, it's like if the scientists are right, and this universe is as big as it is, and it's as old as it is, then there could be entire civilizations who have evolved past all the bullshit we're sitting here arguing about. And if we ran into them, I mean, we would be the fucking, we would be the monkeys to their humans. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we could learn from them, and it, possibly helps, speed up our evolution. Because this can't,
right.
I know that this is like some far out, I swear to God, I haven't smoked anything. Some far out smoke some weed shit. But isn't that the point of life, is to evolve?
This is what you're talking about. It describes what happens in the 3-part series that I'm on. I'm well into the 3rd part of it right now, of the 3-Body Problem series of books by this Chinese author. And it's science fiction about our first alien contact and what happens from there, basically. And the middle book in it is called The Dark Forest. And what happens during the Dark Forest, there's a period in the history of Earth post-alien contact that is referred to as the Dark Forest Deterrence era. And the Dark Forest as a concept is basically, it starts with the idea that if let's say, okay, so the metaphor is you're in a dark forest and you're a hunter, right? And you know that there's other hunters out there.
Okay.
You don't know if those other hunters are peaceful or not. If you come across one, they may kill you. They may team up and you guys use your resources to, help each other out. Who knows? So naturally, most hunters would kind of lean towards I don't want to know the other hunters because I don't know if I can trust them. I'm not willing to take that chance. I'm getting along fine by myself, and having somebody around that could just end up killing me, not worth the risk ultimately, right? But that also limits what that hunter does. For one thing, he doesn't light a fire in the forest to keep himself warm or cook his food, because that would immediately give away his position.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what happens when another hunter sees that fire? They still don't know. Oh, they know there's another hunter over there, but they don't know that hunter's intentions, whether they're good or bad. Well, now that they know that they're there, in the same way that the first hunter didn't want to take the chance of meeting another hunter because he could be killed or hurt, now that the other hunter knows that the first hunter is out there, if you're following me on this one, he has that same thought, but now his choice is only to attack because he doesn't want to take the chance of coming across that hunter by surprise and, not being at the advantage. Knowing that that hunter could be peaceful and cooperative, but there's just as much a chance, and therefore a chance that he's not willing to take, that hunter would want to kill him. So once the fire is lit, the attack has to be made. There's no other choice. So the concept of us communicating with aliens is that once we make contact with another alien race, they are likely to look at us in the same scenario we would look at any other being that we found out there in the universe. Are they good or bad, and what chances can we take? So when we broadcast our signal, they will attack because they don't know if they can ultimately trust us.
See, and I can't remember. Did we talk about the movie The Arrival on air?
Arrival? I still haven't seen that fucking movie.
Okay.
And I really need to. I really need to.
Okay, look, I'm of two minds about sci-fi. I can really enjoy Star Trek, Star Wars, like sci-fi / fantasy type stuff, but then I really appreciate hard sci-fi stuff that bores the fuck out of most other people who would like Star Wars, like the movie Moon, the 2001, 2010, all those type movies. I love them, but then at the same time, I love Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. The Arrival is definitely a hard sci-fi movie, and I think it's one of the best ones to come out since Moon came out, and that's probably 7 years ago.
Okay, I haven't seen Moon,
but Moon is directed by David Bowie's son. I think he just goes by David Jones.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he took his father's original.
And it's Sam.
Given name.
He's in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe.
Sam Rockwell.
Thank you. Yes, and it's basically
who I love.
I don't want to give anything away, but it's kind of a one man film, but you do
kind of like really what's the Mars movie?
The Martian.
Yeah, The Martian. Yeah. Thank you.
I guess, yeah.
Did you like The Martian?
Haven't watched it all the way through.
Oh,
it's
really?
One of the movies I start to watch and I fall asleep because I start to watch it around bedtime.
Oh, I loved that movie. That movie was fantastic.
I mean, I didn't fall asleep out of boredom. I just fell asleep because I was tired. That's kind of the problem.
I get you.
But that's why it took me 4 times of watching the first 2 episodes of Game of Thrones to finally get to episode 3 because I kept falling asleep at one point in the first 2 episodes. But no, The Arrival is it's
too much action or too many names. Either one of those things will make me drowsy.
Yeah, I just kind of Dreamweaver out on it. I'm like, I just hear twinkling somewhere in the ether, and I'm like, really, dude? I'm supposed to do I get a cheat sheet with this? How many fucking people are you going to introduce in the first episode? But The Arrival, it covers somewhat what you're talking about as far as, and it's that's another well-worn sci-fi trope, but at the same time, I think it gives it a little bit more of a modern update. Whereas, usually it's the military we got to destroy it. It's the bad guys, and it's the scientists are going, wait a minute, and it puts a spin on it. It's a lot more human to where. It's a lot more realistic to where you get a variety of humans in the military. So certain people in the military feel one way, certain people feel another way, and some people might act independently of the military, even though they're in it. If you get you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's more, to me, it's more realistic about how some shit like this would happen. And it was. I'm trying to talk about it without giving too much away. There was a certain part in the movie where I was like, oh shit. If I was the aliens, I'd kill everybody on the planet. Right. I mean, and it's only their patience with us that lets the movie continue from a certain point, because it's like, if that was us and we went to another planet, it would be like in Aliens. Fly to orbit, nuke it from orbit. Only way to be sure. I mean, that would just be the way we would fucking look at it. Like, we don't give a fuck.
But there is part of me that stands with Neil deGrasse Tyson on this one as well. His theory is that if an alien civilization is advanced enough to actually come to our planet, something that we couldn't do, certainly not in it would take multiple generations of people to get anywhere that we could possibly find life at this point. But if alien civilization is advanced enough to actually have the technology to achieve near light speed and traverse the universe in reasonable time, then they're probably going to be advanced enough to have basically grown out of their warlike phase, that they are more likely to be peaceful because they are more advanced. I mean, maybe there's some wishful thinking in there as well, but it does kind of make sense. Although, have we as a race become more peaceful as we become more advanced? I mean, certainly on a personal level, I think that's true. Like, we're all not itching for a fight. We'd all much rather watch TV. But as a species, there doesn't seem to be any less of killing each other just because we have smartphones. I don't know. I just don't see the trend in humans. But, man, we went all over on this one. How did we end up here? Did I lose you, Rich? I lost you. I'm talking to myself.
No, I'm here. Sorry. Sorry. I accidentally hit the mute button, and I'm sitting there like, wait a minute, why is he not hearing me? The irony in what you're talking about is at the very instinct that for war and to dominate that would fuck us over is the one that has got us here.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, people tend to forget.
It's our drive.
Like I think it was on the Joe Rogan podcast. He was talking to a biochemist. I can't remember the guy's name, and they were talking about the obesity epidemic. And this biochemist goes, "Let me break it down and explain it to people in a way that they probably have never had explained to them before. The people see fat people and they go, they're weak, they're fat. The problem is they're not weak. In evolution, they were guaranteed to survive because their bodies could store fat and food and they could live off it longer than people who had a higher metabolism that no matter they had to constantly eat. Those people would die off from starvation. So it's a detriment, but it's also the reason why we're here. And then they went into kind of what I brought up, our base violent instinct, but it's the reason we're here. We won. That's on the evolutionary ladder, we were able to climb over somebody else and get our genes into the next generation. And that's kind of the irony of what we're talking about. And I would hope that's part of, if we do run into, I doubt it's ever going to happen in my lifetime. I mean, really, I doubt it. If we ever do run into an alien species, I hope that they've evolved to the point where they're past all that. And if we go out into the universe and we are the ones looking for other people, I hope we evolve past the point of doing that. Because if not, it's going to be a big clusterfuck. It's just going to be, because for every like benevolent and wanting to help, species that might be out there, there might be species that are just like the species in Independence Day. They're here. They go from planet to planet, destroying the inhabitants, using up the resources, and then move on.
Right. And also, if I was to pick apart the Neil deGrasse Tyson statement that I said I stood with, it weighs heavily on our concept of time, right? The ease of traversing the universe is inversely proportional to our concept of time, because 400 years is multiple lifetimes for us. We can't yet imagine traveling to other stars that might possibly have life. But another life form, 400 years might be nothing to them. It might be like, we see that there's life on that planet over there. Well, I lived 3,000 years anyway. Let's spend 400 of those going to see what's up.
Yeah, and on top of that...
And also they could be super huge, and it would just be like, the distance wouldn't even be conceptually the same to them.
Well, also too, this is real nerd shit. If they're capable of speed of light travel, time slows down for them, where it's going at the same speed for us. That's a good point, yep. So, even if they live, let's say they're a humanoid, like us, they have flesh and bone and blood, whatever, and they've managed to learn to live to 150, 200 years. 150, 200 years traveling at the speed of light is, I'm not good at math. I'm not even going to take a shot at it, but I imagine it got to be in the thousands of years as far as people who aren't traveling at the speed of light. Because the quicker, as far as I understand, the quicker you approach the speed of light, the more time slows down. Right. In fact, I'm looking right now. I can't find it, but I know that Neil deGrasse Tyson had in a lecture I saw him give, he basically broke down how we are capable with the technology we have right now to achieve 85% the speed of light. The problem is we don't take it serious enough to put the money into the research and the development
right?
Of just doing it.
Well, we could. The thing is, you have such little resistance in outer space that you could do that with our current technology. It would just take so much fuel and such an enormous vehicle to transport all that fuel, and it's likely it would be a one-way trip. And it would also take, well, I think in the even in the more advanced ships, at the stage that I'm reading in the Three Body Problem series, we're about 300 years into the future, and while humans saw a definite setback of technology because of alien interference in this book, there is actually a point where there's a huge boom in technology once that alien ban is lifted. And their ships take a year. It would take a year for them to achieve I think they said 15% of light speed that they are able to achieve.
So they would ramp up to it?
Yeah, it's because you have no resistance that every time that you boost in one direction, you are adding to your velocity. It's not like driving a car where you're constricted by wind resistance and gravity, and if you take your foot off the gas, you will naturally slow down. So, yes, you can continue to accelerate. Of course, you'd also have, part of this concept, actually, I believe you would have to, I don't know. Would you have to go into stasis? I don't think that's a known question. If you achieve speeds that fast, would you have to essentially be on autopilot and in stasis to survive that?
Well, there wouldn't be, unless it's a perpetual thrust, there wouldn't be gravity or G-forces to worry about.
Right, that's probably part of the reason why it would take a year to achieve the near light speed.
He was. I wish I could find that lecture, but it's a long lecture, and I don't have any parts bookmarked to go to real quickly. But he was talking about basically using. You'd have to build this craft in space. We'd have to launch it from space, obviously, if we build it in space. And
right, because we use half the fuel just getting off the Earth, and we wouldn't have enough left for the journey that we wanted to make.
Exactly. And then there was, with the Voyager probes and all this, any probes we send into deep space, we've done this, using one of the gas giants, either Jupiter or Saturn, and get the slingshot effect.
Right.
And then and then fire thrusters, and then that would get us up to speed. But if you think about it, if we're traveling at 85% of light speed, the nearest star is Alpha Centauri. It's 4 light years away. Okay, so 85% of 365 days is 310 days. So that's like what? That's an extra 200 days if we're traveling at 85% of light speed. So,
yeah, I'm not sure it really works out that way, but I get what you're going for.
You know what I'm saying? Well, I don't claim to be a math major. That's for goddamn sure. And I don't claim to understand, astrophysics either. But if you think about it that way, it's like that is insane. If he is correct, and it is possible for us to and we have that technology right now, that we're not doing anything with it. Mm-hmm. And as much as I bristled every time the subject of space exploration comes up, when you and Chris go, it's going to be private industry that basically is the one that's going to spearhead it from here on out. I'm like, God damn, I hate that because...
Well, you're right. It shouldn't be. It should be something that everybody is for. Not everybody. You're not going to get 100% of the people behind any one issue. But it should be something that we strive for as a species that is naturally reflected in the governments and the people that we choose to represent us. And it's not.
Even the problem is that the space race in the 60s, my dad told me
that was about power. Wasn't it? It wasn't really about... Yes. The man on the moon was symbolic of the missile they could put there at a later date.
Exactly. My dad was telling me that when he remembers when he found out that Sputnik was orbiting Earth, that Russians had put a satellite up there. Right. People...
He ran outside and mooned the sky.
No,
was flipping it off. Fuck you, Sputnik.
I asked him. I said, "What was the general feeling?" And people were terrified. They're like, Does it have a weapon up there? Are they going to kill us? Are they?" And so fear is what drove the space race. I mean, ultimately, when you look at it, because it was a competition and we couldn't let them win.
Right.
So we have to get there first. We got there first, and we went, okay, well, we're on the moon. It's basically just a bunch of rocks and shit, and no monolith was dug up. Yeah. We're done.
We're eventually going to reach a point of no return with our destruction of the Earth that the scientists will then have to turn from you're destroying the Earth to you've got to support space exploration because you've destroyed this Earth. Well, so there's a fear that'll drive you to Mars.
See, that's so I've kind of, getting back to what I was saying about private industry driving space exploration, I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that it's going to have to happen. There might be, through the limited funding that we give to NASA or from other countries, who knows, in the future, there might be breakthroughs that come from random governments here and there, but it's going to be private industry. And my concern is, at that point, we're not doing it with forward thinking as far as, we need to do this to survive as a species for the betterment of us. We're doing it now because we have to turn a buck and make a profit.
Yeah.
And it's like some things we should do, without thinking that there's going to be a pot of gold at the end of it.
But there's also, the concept of the private industry and their involvement in the progress of our nation, the two are so intertwined. Look at World War II. When we needed to go into production for massive orders for tanks and weapons and everything, and just the bare necessities that people needed over there, this country went into action. But it's not like the government created factories out of nothing. It was the automobile industries and the textile industries and the steel industry.
Retooling for war, for machines of war.
Right, absolutely. And so that's where your innovations came from. And while we like to point to things that these are innovations that came from NASA, I think a lot of this is in defense of like, oh no, there's a reason why we're spending this money. Look, Tang, and you can pee in your suit. But a lot of that, while not all of it, but a lot of that still comes from private industry. And even the space race they didn't create. NASA wasn't created out of thin air. They had to go somewhere for some resources to start with. So the concept that because SpaceX is subcontracted by NASA. SpaceX is responsible for getting shit up into the air for NASA. I think there's more hand-in-hand operation than most people realize. It's not an either-or situation. It would be nice to see a real healthy support from our government when it comes to space exploration in general and furthering these technologies that are the next logical step for our race, not just our country. It would be really nice to see that, but I'm kind of satisfied knowing that in lieu of that support, that private industry will step forward. It's kind of like public radio. The amount of support that they actually get from the government is, I think, usually you hear from like public radio stations anywhere between like 10 to 20% of their budget. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are they going to go under because government pulls funding for Sesame Street or whatnot? No. As a matter of fact, there's going to be liberals with money that go, oh, we've got to give now. And and businesses too that will want to support these things. So.
And you'll have what happened. You'll have what happened will happen again. HBO stepped in and said, "We'll take Sesame Street. We'll produce new episodes,
right? And
we'll put it on the air." And so even if you take funding from it, something else will pick it up. The problem is that it goes from now being something that was created for the education of children that was on free public television to now you have to pay for it. You got to pay for HBO to get your kids to watch it. And you can pirate it.
No, but I hear you.
I mean, and that's it, and I understand because I try to explain this to people all the time. Anytime you mix commerce and art and or commerce and education, you're dancing with the devil, and you're going to have to make certain concessions whether you want to or not. And I guess I've grown up with I've taken for granted that science, you don't have to mix with commerce. Science is something that is just, it's such a natural instinct for us to go why and go search out the answers that we all should fucking just accept that, yes, we're going to have parts of our government that are going to do this. We're going to have scholars that are going to do this, and we're going to pay for it because we wouldn't be here if someone didn't stand up and go, I wonder what's on the other side of this ocean. We just wouldn't. But now that you have people that they go, well, we know everything. We got pictures of the planet. We don't know shit. We've never been to the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean. We haven't explored this entire planet.
We haven't even cataloged all the species that live on here.
Exactly.
And I'm not talking all microscopic ones.
Yeah. I mean, and, once again, going back to Neil deGrasse Tyson, he himself has said there's more than likely planet size. And we're not talking Pluto. We're not talking dwarf planets. We're talking, what we consider planet-sized bodies beyond Pluto in our own solar system. We just can't see them with the strongest telescope, and we haven't found them yet through gravitational and way how we find planets in other solar systems.
That's how this whole Pluto thing started, is because Pluto always had an erratic orbit, and then they started finding other bodies that had similar orbits just a little bit further out. So it wasn't that Pluto stopped behaving like a planet. They found another category of body and realized that Pluto was actually more similar to this category of astral body than the planets that held a traditional orbit around the sun.
Yeah,
and
basically,
it's a classification of how much gravitational pull the sun has on the planet.
It's basically, the sun's gravitational pull pulled in Pluto from the Kuiper Belt, and that's why it has the erratic orbit it has. It doesn't have the same orbit as...
But it's like a plastic bag that you pick up on the front of your car. It doesn't become a part of your car. When it falls off, you don't get it replaced.
Exactly.
Can you put the Kroger bag back in my radiator, please? That's not supposed to be there?
See, I'm just thinking of American Beauty and some weirdo film in a plastic bag. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Oh, it's in the front of someone's Ford now.
Right.
I guess that's an option on the 2017s. Oh, shit. Well, I mean, I guess what all this conversation comes down to is that obviously we're two people who have a desire for knowledge, and we ask the questions why, and we want answers.
And we're just regular guys.
Exactly.
This is the normal state of people. People who are not curious are the ones that confuse me.
But Aaron, I know this is going to sound like get off our lawn.
Yeah.
But honestly, do you notice that people of all generations, from our generation down, including our own, are less and less curious? It's almost like, just leave me alone as long as I got my four walls, a roof over my head, 2.5 cars, 2.5 kids, white picket fence. I'm happy. I don't care. I don't want to know how shit works. I just want to turn it on and it works.
I know it's a difficult thing to quantize, but we're always going to look at the upcoming generation as not being as curious, because we all know that at that age we believed we knew it all. We figured it out by 18 years old, and now we're only.
That's why I included our generation in there.
Right?
Also.
No, I hear you. Just because we do kind of have to reset, each generation has to figure out on their own that they don't know shit, and then get a real curiosity about how the world works from there. But as a species, while it may retard our progress slightly, it certainly hasn't stopped the exponential growth overall. So I don't know. I think when you look at the bigger picture, the idea of curiosity and exploration in the human species is still on a healthy incline. And honestly, it is the creature comforts that allow us to have that. It's the luxury of having free time to just think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like in The Sopranos when Tony was inevitably in one of his times of beating up on himself about, why I'm talking to a therapist, and Dr. Melfi said something that, yes, one, it's a TV show, but two, I think a lot of people probably need to hear this. Once we've kind of covered the basics of survival, it's only natural now that we start to work on the higher forms of consciousness besides base survival.
Right.
So, like, why we think the way we do. Why do we act the way we do? Nature versus nurture. Are these behaviors and impulses are they inherent or are they learned? Can we breed them out? Can we rationalize them out of us, ourselves, et cetera, et cetera? That's not a pussy thing. But I'm part of that generation that, like, I feel like I kind of got half and half. I kind of got, it's pussy to go to a therapist and ask for help and talk about your feelings, but at the same time, it was encouraged.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Like, I got mixed signals. Whereas I feel generations, that came after us, pretty much. I mean, you still have it's a pussy thing to fucking talk about your feelings, but that's a minority fucking viewpoint, at least here in the States with younger people. And I see it every day, and that's not something that I consider a bad thing. So it's not like I'm making a judgment call like bunch of pussies. It's just something that I see that they're just so much more open to talk about stuff that we never would have talked about, because it'd be seen as, what are you, a fag? No one talks about their fucking feelings.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had guys that I work with that are 21, 22 sit there and spill their guts to me about some girl that they're hopelessly in love with. If I did that at 22 to a 38-year-old man at work, he'd have been like, just fuck her and get it over with. Don't be a pussy. That'd have been the end of the conversation. Like, I wouldn't have gotten, there's no way I would have done it, period, because I know that would have been the response.
Well, I'm curious now because I think maybe I misunderstood your initial premise on this. But do you think there's a tie between increased empathy and increased curiosity? Or maybe it's the opposite, where increased empathy makes you more inward looking, but not so much caring about the bigger picture of the world around you? Does a millennial make a better or worse explorer, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
I think the jury's still out only because of this, and I know it's going to come off as a cop-out, but this is how I honestly feel.
Yeah.
I feel that a lot of millennials have embraced being labeled a lot more than any of my friends when we were their age did. We were like, we're individuals. Don't lump us in with a group. And I feel like that a lot of millennials are like, when they go online and they read something and they find out that there's a group of people who are like-minded, they feel like, now I belong to something. And I think that's natural when you're younger, because that's you discovering yourself. After the novelty of that wears off, I would hope that they're as inquisitive as any other generation has been, more so even. I mean, but it just seems like right now, the questions and the curiosity in the younger generation, at least the way it's presented in the media, presented in pop culture, it's more of like, what gender are you? What's your sexual identification? What group do you fit in? Are you gender fluid, or are you non-binary? And and there's all this shit. I'm going, oh my God, just be your fucking self, man. This is the first time in American history you can basically just be yourself, and everybody's just struggling to find labels to label on themselves. And that's the first thing you go to their page, their Facebook page. That's the first thing on there. I'm a gender fluid, non-binary, and it's like, I don't give a fuck if that's all you got. That's like, look. I'm glad you discovered that for yourself, but. You got to be deeper than that. I've stepped in puddles that got more depth than that. Come on, man.
This is one of the concepts that Adam Carolla uses a lot that has always really stuck with me is, I think he refers to as people chewing their own leg off. But basically it's the concept that, well, I don't think he's ever put it this way, and maybe I'm extrapolating, but this is my concept of it, that a person who has as much free time as your average person does now, especially if they have a decent job, they get to go home, and even if they have family and kids and a dinner to prepare and all that, they still have at least a couple hours to either just zone out or not have to do anything, do whatever they want. Mm-hmm. And, so naturally, there's going to be enough leisure time for some thought to happen there. And when you go introspective and you either aren't capable or prepared to deal with what you find, or you're in denial of that, you then turn outward and look for other things to latch on to, other problems to solve, because you either find that your own problems are unsolvable or that you're in denial that they exist in the first place, and it's not you that's the problem, it's other people always.
Yeah.
So I think there's some of that in there, I believe, as well. There's not to say that a millennial questioning their gender or their identity in some way should look inward and figure out what their problem is and not try to make other people conform to it. Because I don't believe that. I believe they have the freedom to identify and be treated how they want to and within reason, and I really don't give a fuck otherwise. Like you were saying, let's just accept it and move on. I don't see where the cause is here unless there's actual discrimination. The transgender bathroom thing is one thing. Having to have an awareness and acceptance of, anybody's sexual orientation, the fuck does that matter? Does it change what bathroom you pee in or how I shake your hand or anything?
I mean, I guess I feel the same way if I go to someone's Facebook page and the first thing I see is, I'm of Irish descent. I'm Irish. Everything's Irish. And I'm like, okay, great, wonderful. Is that all there is to you? You know what I'm saying? Like, because that's what you're presenting. And see, what worries me is that self-discovery is very important in young people. Okay. And it's now that a lot of the taboo of sexuality has been lifted, because I don't really think until you are a parent of teenage kids who are in the middle of discovering their sexuality, you really realize how much taboo has been lifted from it from when we were kids. I think it's just an abstract. It's an abstract concept.
I'm going to start learning that.
Oh, you're going to find out. You're going to find out soon, homeboy. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Check is in the mail on that one, so to speak.
And it's like, it's a good thing, because I'd rather people just be like, look, I'm into this, and this is what I'm attracted to, and here you go. Right. And obviously they come out.
When your human nature doesn't directly affect other people, then express it as much as you can. That's great.
And my concern is that, okay, and coming out is or letting people know, your family, etc. Like when we had Monique on, she said she came out to her parents as pansexual. I get that that's an important thing, but ultimately, I'm just worried that a lot of people are going to get stuck in that moment, like how a lot of people get stuck in high school. They think they peaked in high school. They romanticize high school in their late teenage years. And it was everything was so great and it was wonderful, or how a lot of people who usually aren't musicians get stuck in loving music from the era they first got laid in. Yeah, and then like they may have a respect for what came before, and they may like a few random songs on the radio now, but nothing's gonna beat that old Jack and Diane song. Nothing's gonna beat
Right. I mean, I'm a sucker for nostalgia as much as anybody is, and it's not like you should just go, oh, that song was made 20 years ago. That's shit. they make much better music now. No, it's not how it works. But I don't let it dictate everything that I consume.
Exactly, because my concern is if you get stuck in that moment, then you stop thinking forward. And I'm not talking about living in the future, because I know people that do that I think it was you and I were talking off air one time, and I had someone describe to me, if you live in the past and you're worried about the future, you're pissing all over right now. And that's not good.
You got 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the future, and you're pissing on the present.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But we have to be forward thinking, and we have to have those people. And I understand not everyone's going to be that way. Some people are more introverted, some people are more extroverted. But I mean, a lot of the things that I worry that as a society it's going to be like nerds used to be scientists and people who were in chemistry and
now there are people who like comic book movies.
Yes. And it's like, okay, that's great and it's wonderful, but that's a hobby, okay?
Right.
And even though yes, it is an industry, it's not an industry everybody who's a fan of comics can be in. It's just like musicians. Just because people go, well, are you a musician? How much do you make playing music? You don't have to make money to be a musician. Being a musician means you take your craft seriously and you create music and you play music, and that's it. Now, if you want to quantify it or qualify it, okay, a professional musician means you get paid to play. I'll give you that. But there's musicians who will never leave their fucking bedroom who are amazing musicians. I've heard them. I've jammed with them. But they, that's not going to be what they're going to do for the rest of their life. And I just worry that we're not, here in America, definitely, maybe it's Western culture, we're not really producing a whole lot of people who are just like jumping into the science industries and setting the world on fire. And I know it's kind of tribalistic when I say, American or Western culture, but at the same time, we still live in a world where people divide themselves up by how they look and where they were born, whether we like it or not. And
well, this also is an extension of what we were talking about earlier, and the how important the government believes science is. Right now, that's probably at an all-time low, but this didn't come out of nowhere. This has been a downward trend for a while now. I mean, going back even before the first example I can definitely think being pissed about in my lifetime was George Bush and his stance on stem cells. And we've seen what's happened with the progress on stem cells since then, and very little of that is actually happening in the U.S. now. So, yeah, there's a brain drain that happens that not only do we not so much encourage our own citizens to get into the sciences and just be scientifically thinking in general, but the ones that are actually interested in that might be more likely to go study somewhere else. So there's American scientists that are working in China right now with CRISPR gene editing, which, I mean, you want to get scared about artificial intelligence. Imagine breeding a whole race of super intelligent, nigh indestructible people who can regrow body parts.
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of people tend to forget, that the Nazis were studying eugenics back in the 30s. This is nothing new. It's just something that, for whatever reason, it's not at the front of the public's consciousness. And if it was being studied in the 30s, I understand. But if it was being studied in the 30s, it's been studied since then.
Right.
Just because we're not aware of it on a day-to-day basis, like computers and those advances. There's been advances in that.
I don't know if we've talked about this on air before, because I've ranted to many people about CRISPR. But if you're unfamiliar with the technology, it's not actually really technology. It's hijacking biology of other life forms. They found a virus, a certain virus, that was able to attach itself to a sequence of DNA and import its own mutation that would be beneficial to it. And it was basically a little mutation. It's a, hey, secrete this, I think it's like, secrete some of your sucrose and I'll eat it and basically be a parasite. Well, they were able to find that they could take this little virus and hijack it with whatever sequence of DNA they wanted to. So this virus was prepackaged with this little sequence of DNA that it would go in and attach itself and literally snip it out with these little little snipper mandible things that would actually just go in and cut a sequence of DNA out, put theirs in, and therefore change the sequence of the creature, the one-celled organism that it was trying to feed off of. So not only can we load it, but we can now program it to look for certain things, because it's also got another gene inside of it that says, this is what to look for, right? It's got to have a little map so it knows when it finds that correct sequence of letters that makes up the sequence it's looking for. So we can tell it to, once we identify it, say, hey, we don't want anyone to get polio anymore. So we'll just figure out what part of the gene makes us susceptible to that. We'll identify it, load it in this virus, tell it to look for that gene and replace it with this one. So not only is this technology efficient, it is so ridiculously cheap that just about anybody can do this shit. You can actually order your own CRISPR kits for a reasonable amount of money and do a little bit of gene editing at home.
Oh, Jesus.
That's some scary shit.
Yeah, that's the shit that but this sci-fi nightmares are made of.
This also might be, a lot of the concept that we've been talking about for the last almost 2 hours now, is things that might not even happen in our lifetime, or so we say, but our concept of our lifetime might be changing. And this isn't just about raising people with edited genes. This is the ability to possibly edit the genes of ourselves and actually create mutations that would be beneficial to us, that would make us impervious to cancer and to heart disease and to liver failure, colon cancer, all these other things that kill people. And
so, we
could be the last generation
to die from all that shit.
Yeah, wouldn't that suck? To be the last. I want to be the first that reaps the benefits.
Well, someone's got to be the last, man.
Fuck you, history.
It would kind of fit the
Fuck
Gen
you,
X.
Napoleon and Caesar
It kind of fit that Gen X is the generation is the one that's like, yeah, you're the last ones to die from all this fucking shit.
How's eternity? That's all right, I guess.
Whatever. I wish it had HBO.
Netflix has sucked for the last 500 years, but at least John Oliver's still around, where his head is.
Well, I think you brought up something I thought was a good point.
Yeah.
The first thing that you remember really irritating you, as far as
stem cell shit.
Yeah.
When I was God darn it, and I threw down my hat and jumped up and down on it.
Like, for me, it was after the Challenger explosion, just the almost complete halt of manned space missions. And yeah, I was young. But I had already started reading 2001. I was fascinated. I was fascinated by I
was knee deep in geek at that point.
Oh yeah. And I think it was Carl Sagan that said at one point, he was like, look at when the Mercury astronauts, the 3 Mercury astronauts, burn up in their capsule. There was hardly a blip in manned space flight and manned space exploration.
Right. It was soldier on.
Yep.
We have to do it now because their sacrifice has to mean something, actually, was the attitude.
And after the Challenger, it was, okay, put the brakes on. we can never let this happen again.
Whoa, Nelly, we sent a teacher up there, and that was a bad idea.
But his point was, everything we've ever discovered as far as exploration, a lot of it would either have been delayed or we wouldn't have discovered it at all if we took that attitude that we took after the Challenger explosion.
Would the railroads have been built? Would any progress been made without the cost of human lives in this history of mankind?
The first time there was massive pileup of cars, of automobiles that cost a lot of people their lives. If we just automatically went, oh God, these are deadly, and these are instruments of travel, but they're deadly, right, and we just stopped fucking with them out of fear.
Right.
Instead of going, well, let's make them safer. Let's put seatbelts in there. Let's put glass that pops out that doesn't, slice you up, etc. Airbags, etc., etc. We'd still fucking be on trolleys and shit.
Right. I'm sure the Chinese and the Irish were like, we see how it is. Like, millions of us can die to make your infrastructure, but send 6 white people up into space and they blow up. And whoa, wait a minute, put the brakes on this one.
But I mean, it really is. It was like It was almost a 10-year gap. I mean, that we took basically we just said, okay, we're done for almost better part of a decade, and that's the type of stuff that I can't imagine happening. And that way we can't even place that at the feet of the millennials because they were just they were barely born. The first millennials were barely born when Challenger happened. So this has nothing to do with them. This is solidly in our generation and in the tail end of the baby boomers. They were like, oh, shit, pump the brakes. Hold on a sec here. And it's like, no, wait a minute. This is the cost of exploration. And for everything we've done as far as leaving this planet, look at the body count versus how many times we successfully sent people off this planet and returned them.
We got a pretty good rate. Yeah. I
think it's a pretty fair trade-off. I know that sounds cold and callous to people.
I don't think there's any astronaut that would disagree with you. They're all like, send me up.
Exactly. They know the risk and they're willing to take it. You're sitting on rockets that could explode on the pad. You know that. Believe me, they know that better than anybody when that fucker fires underneath their ass. Yeah. They know that. You don't have to tell them.
There's a reason you can defecate in your suit.
Exactly. When Alan B. Shepard was the first American in space, and he said, "I got to take a piss," and they went, "We didn't think about this." They were like, "Right, okay." So when he comes back, we're going to redesign the suit so you can piss and take a shit because it's going to happen. But I mean, I don't know. I guess the more I think about it, and. When we're on Unregimented, we're talking about topical stuff to put politics to shit.
Well, we start off, but it does tend to wander.
But I mean, that's important to an extent. But I mean, I keep going back to a quote. I cannot remember who exactly said it, but I know that Living Colour sampled it at the beginning of one of their songs, and the quote was, "Words are very." No, I know that one. No, it was words are very important. But the day we take them too seriously, it destroys everything. And I'm paraphrasing it. And it's like politics ultimately is a war of words. It's pushing air from two sides. And it's like, okay, and we've discussed this before. It's like it's gotten to the point where it's sports teams here in this country. Pick your team and root for them no matter what. And that's another part that I worry about because there's so much of a train of thought these days. Case in point with this Tommy Lahren, whatever her name is.
Oh, yeah. And her stance on abortion.
Yes. If you don't toe the line. She's a traitor to
her cause.
Exactly. If you don't toe the line exactly, we're gonna throw you off our team. Right. And it's not just the right that does that. It's the left that does that.
Oh, no. If Rachel Maddow came out as anti-abortion, she would lose her show.
Oh, God. Oh, definitely, in a heartbeat.
I mean, she never would. But if she did, there's no way she would have a fucking career.
Yeah. Oh, unacceptable. I've heard arguments between people who you have one person who says they're pro-choice, another person says I'm pro-choice, but I would never have an abortion, and they'll get attacked. So what are you saying? Are you making a judgment call on people to have abortion? Are you saying there's something wrong with them, that they made a wrong decision? And they're like, no. Personally, I would never have an abortion, but I believe a woman has a right to choose whether she wants to have one or not. That's all I'm saying. I mean, and I've seen arguments between people, and
what
I'm
else
like,
can you
wow.
ask for? Right?
Wow.
You can't police other people's thoughts, except that they accept your decisions and move the fuck on.
And see, that's what scares me, because we have so many people who are starting to think that, and the media is just reinforcing it, that we're losing critical thinkers. We're losing people who will think outside of the pre-approved fucking agenda that your side has issued to you. And science, to me, should be politic-free. It should be religion-free. Science should be, look, we're dealing in what we can prove and what we can't prove. And not in a court of law way. All right? We're dealing in, like, science is absolutes in a lot of ways, whereas politics, people want it to be absolutes, but it's not. There's a lot of gray area and a lot of issues. You know, the death penalty being one of them, abortion being another. Even if you, like I said, once again, even if you support, you know, a woman's right to choose, you might say, myself personally, I would never have one. Like, you know, like I said a few minutes ago, that's gray area. That's not black or white. That's not all or nothing. Mm-hmm. And science should progress and just disregard all that shit. And the problem is we're politicizing everything, and I'm starting to wonder, and the more I follow, this is really nerdy shit, I've started to follow a lot of college professors on Facebook and go to their pages and watch their lectures and stuff like that. Nice. And a lot of them are talking about how they can't even get up there and speak about communist Russia without being accused
of promoting the concept
of shaming socialism or communism and being like a far right, you know, hate-filled hate monger who isn't open to anybody else's ideas. And they're like, I am literally teaching a history class. I am telling you facts about what happened.
Repeating what happened, okay?
I'm not making a judgment call on any of this. Right. Shut the fuck up. Write down the shit, regurgitate it on the test, and move on with your life.
Right, this concept of shame, I don't really get it. I mean, I understand. Everyone's felt shame. I felt shame when I'm busted on shit that I've done, right? Otherwise, I mean, to me, shame is nothing but the voice in your head that agrees with what other people are saying. Because if you don't have that voice, you don't have the shame. Someone tries to slut shame you and say, oh, you sleep around too much. Really? I feel like I do it just enough.
I get enough dick to satisfy my daily quota. And my daily quota of dick might be more or less than yours. It's a personal thing.
Right. It's like, what? Who are you to decide what's enough? Do I tell you how much cream you should have in your coffee? Doesn't matter. You don't tell me how much cream I should have in my pussy. So,
but I mean, do you get what I'm saying? As far as I'm worried,
no, I do.
This type of thinking will start to bleed over into areas that it should not even be a part of. It shouldn't even be in consider. If you're running experiments and if you're trying to figure something out using the scientific method, political views are irrelevant to what you're doing.
Emotions are nothing but a hindrance.
Exactly.
And when you base everything, when you start from the position of how do I personally feel about this, how does it make me feel, how are you? I mean, you certainly aren't getting any science done, I guess.
I mean, basically, if you start injecting emotion and values and judgment calls,
right? How many scientists?
Basically, you're now talking psychology and philosophy. You're not talking science anymore.
Any scientist that you hear from that has gotten something wrong, you know, and it happens all the time because we find out new things that disprove old things, and doesn't mean that we wouldn't have gotten there without the old without the old things that we used to believe, right? It was all a step. It was all progress. But a lot of times it's the scientists saying, well, I saw what I wanted to see, After spending so long on this, I wanted to believe that what I saw in the results was truth, but I was projecting, I wanted the universe to revolve around the world because that made sense. I wanted the Earth to be flat because that made sense at the time.
Well, that's why there's peer reviews, and there's people who also run the exact same test who aren't as passionate about an outcome. In fact, the less passionate they are, usually the truer outcome we're going to get, because they're not going to tend to read a result in favor of the way they feel. Right. And that's part of the scientific method. I mean, bias is going to be there. That's just all there is to it. If you are spending your entire life searching for something in let's say the field of biochem, and you think you found it, and you put it up for peer review, and you put it through testing, and everybody comes back and says, we didn't come up with the same results that you did. As a scientist, you have to be able to go, okay, no matter how much I wanted to find it, obviously I didn't.
Right, and I can't publish this.
Exactly. All right. Or I have to publish it and say, this is how I failed. Don't make the same mistakes if you're looking for what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. Right. So as much as we want to say that our government is partially to blame for having so little faith in science in general and just not supporting science and exploration in this country, but it's the people who put these people in office, and it's these same people who only use the word theory in quotes or use the phrase just a theory.
Yeah.
Really, just a theory. Yeah, a theory is a result of usually years' worth of work and multiple scientists and sometimes multiple generations of scientists to construct single theories.
I think the best response I heard to that was, oh shit, I cannot remember. He's an Asian guy. He's kind of got longer hair. It's like white hair.
Yeah.
He's on the History Channel a lot. But anyways,
he invent Nintendo?
No. No, and he didn't invent Metal Gear either. But anyways, he was on a panel and they were talking and they said, they had a creationist and they had a Christian scientist, and he was reconciling how the 6 days could be 6 million years. And then they had someone who took the Bible as literal fact, and then they had him and a few other people, and the person who took the Bible as literal fact, and the Christian scientist, which is the biggest oxymoron I've heard since jumbo shrimp.
Right.
Free rent. But anyways, they pointed out to him, they go, well, evolution, it's just a theory. It's the theory of evolution. And he goes, you know what, you're right. It is the theory of evolution. And we have the theory of gravity. So why don't you both go on top of this building and take a swan dive off the top of it and prove the theory of gravity wrong? Right. And it was just dead silence on the panel. And I was like, if I'd have been running the camera, I'd have been fired, because I'd have just let go of the camera and just stood up and started clapping. Like, I'd have probably done the Lucas slow clap.
Oh, shit! No, he didn't!
No, I'd have started the slow clap like an 80s movie. Like, yeah, come on, guys. Look, Lucas caught the football. Give him his leather jacket.
I would have been like Arsenio. Like I was in the Arsenio audience. Like, woo, 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 woo.
That's what's up. That's what's up. But, I mean, it's when I hear shit like that, I'm just like, come on, people, seriously. Like, I understand, and it's something that, like, we've talked about before when we were talking about people with beliefs that are getting to be outdated, to be not useful, to be toxic, really, as far as progress goes. And when I said leave them behind, I didn't say it. I mean, it sounds cold and like I'm just leaving behind to sink or swim on their own. But it's like the Amish. Let them, if they don't want to use fucking electricity, let them not use electricity.
Fine. Yeah,
that's fine. And you know what?
All the more for the rest of us.
Yeah, and having been around Amish in different parts of the country, I can tell you this: if their buggy breaks down and their horse runs off, they're not above taking a ride.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So when push comes to shove, Even outside world, they'll take advantage of from here and there.
Where do you think everybody on the East Coast is going to go when the zombie apocalypse hits?
Yeah, exactly.
When the infrastructure truly breaks down, we'll all be like, "Excuse me, sir, do you have any whale oil?"
No, we're all going to change our name to Brother Ezekiel and end up in Pennsylvania somewhere, churning butter and shit. But no, I mean, so people who when it comes to religious people who are, I mean, just highly, highly religious, who are like, the world is 6,000 years old because the Bible says so, because we added up all the ages of everybody in the Bible. Okay, great. Guess what? We're going to put you over there. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move forward. You stay over there believing the world's 6,000 years old. Eventually, they're going to see the technological advancements we're making, and they're going to want some of that because it's going to make their life easier. Or they're not going to. They're going to do the opposite and recoil from it, and they're going to start their own little sect. And if that's the case, hey, we got a big country, and there's lots of parts of it that are unpopulated. Go live there. Start your own little fucking thing. And we don't care. But guess what? Keep it out of our government. Keep it out of our fucking science textbooks. And homeschool your little fucking crotch droppings and tell them that shit.
Best meme that I saw this week was a picture of Adam and Eve in the garden, and it says, religion tells us that the entire human race came from Adam and Eve and their sons. Think about that.
So that means Mama was getting filled out like a job application at one point.
Right.
That means Adam, Cain, and Abel were all in a hole airtight in her at one point. Yeah,
it was like it down in the sewers.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't have been a gangbang in the Garden of Eden because they'd been thrown out before they had kids. Right, so yeah. It'd have been just on the outskirts of the Garden of Eden.
Which, by the way, that preview for the new It movie looks pretty tasty, I have to admit. I'm not much for the horror film in general, but I'm kind of a sucker for anything Stephen King, even if it's kind of bad, which, let's face it, it's been a rocky history. Even the adaptations that were acclaimed weren't true to the original story, like The Shining is a perfect example. That was definitely more Kubrick's thing than Stephen King's thing in the end.
Oh yeah, that definitely. And same thing with the Dead Zone. That was
right.
That was Cronenberg's version of that story.
Lawnmower Man.
I don't know how the fuck they got that out of that. Yeah. Literally, they bought the right to use the name Lawnmower Man and then wrote a movie that had nothing to do with the story.
Right. Have you ever read the original? It's in
Night Shift.
Is it in Night Shift? Was that or?
It's in Night Shift or
the. I thought it was one of the Bachman books, like he did under the pseudonym.
No, it was a short story.
Yeah,
and
okay.
there's two of them. There's the Lawnmower Man Part 1, where he's cutting the grass and he's eating the grass as it's cutting.
Right, and then he's saying vroom vroom.
Yeah, and then there's the Lawnmower, which is I'm like, how high was he when he wrote that story? And then there's the Lawnmower Man Tales of the Milkman. Which is,
I remember that one.
Where the milkman's going around the neighborhood poisoning people, and it has a very loose connection to the first story, but it's there somehow.
Oh my god, that reminds me of another thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up: the Angel of Death. But go on, because I want to talk about it.
Okay, what I was going to say is the I want to say a lot of his movies since probably the mid '90s. Mm-hmm. Pet Sematary was really probably the last really shitty movie as far as I have a sentimental place for it because Pet Sematary was the first Stephen King book I read. When I saw it on the day it came out, my mother took me and was like horrified because she's like, if the book is, she's going, this is horrible. You were reading this at 9 years old? And I said, the book's worse than this, Mom.
No shit.
And she's like, I'm a horrible parent, and I'm like, kind of, but thank you. I appreciate you bringing me to the movie.
Right. It's like everybody that freaked out at Train Spotting, and I'm like, oh boy, you should read the book.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fucked up.
But I mean, you start with Misery or Stand By Me, which was the 80s. That was based on The Body. That is damn near, I mean, even the ending where he's talking about what happened to the guys.
That's true.
Is word for word. Then you had Misery, which was a very close adaptation, which was another Rob Rob Reiner film, I believe.
No.
Which was
it? No, that was...
Stand By Me was Rob Reiner, and Misery was Rob Reiner, yeah.
Rob Reiner did Misery, too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And then you had the, the guy who did Shawshank and Green Mile. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, that director. But he started making movies, Stephen King movies. And those were, I mean, the Shawshank Redemption is damn close to that short novella as you can get. The Green Mile, it was a serialized story. Every month they released a new book. And they had to cut parts out for the fact, I mean, the movie's already 2.5 hours. It'd have been probably 4 hours if they kept every single thing.
Well, see, I haven't actually read those ones, so...
Okay. But I mean,
I'm not seeing it from as full a perspective as you are.
Those are right on with the novels and the source material. Mm-hmm. And so it started giving me hope that I was like, oh, all right, hey, we're getting... And on top of that, those are more much... I hate to say this, more mature Stephen King stories, because you say Stephen King, and unless they're an avid reader or a huge fan of his, people automatically think all he does is write horror. Right. Stephen King's he's released books of poetry. Now, a lot of it's garbage.
Frank Darabont.
Frank Darabont, yes.
That's the guy. He did Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and The Mist.
And The Mist, which is, another one that was damn close.
And Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which actually was pretty good. as cheesy as that movie is.
He really did that? I didn't know that.
He did the third one, yeah.
Holy shit. But, and then you had the TV adaptations.
Right, the original It that we saw.
Yeah, you had that. You had Tommyknockers, which was horrible.
I didn't see that one. I didn't really, I don't think I finished Tommyknockers, actually. I don't remember liking that book as much.
Real quick story about Tommyknockers and Stephen King. He was doing an insane amount of cocaine. He was drinking at least a case of beer a day, and he was taking it was before codeine cough syrup. He was mixing all this while he was writing that book.
Damn.
He barely remembers writing the book. Now, the interesting part about that is there's a character in that book, Jim Gardner, who is the most self-destructive alcoholic Stephen King's ever wrote about.
Okay.
And I think it's interesting that he was at the point where his wife literally came in, dumped the garbage on his desk while he was working, and said, here's bloody tissues because you constantly have a nosebleed because you're doing fucking an 8-ball a day. Here's empty fucking cough syrup bottles. He was also drinking mouthwash with alcohol in it, plus booze on top of it.
Jeez.
She said, either you get help or I'm packing the kids up and we're done. And he was like, I'll go get help. But he had already finished writing Tommyknockers. When he got out of, his detox and he went back to look at that book, he was like, I don't remember writing any of this, but basically it was a cry for help I was writing. Because Jim Gardner is a hopeless, the main protagonist of that story is a hopeless alcoholic who's just got a self-destructive streak a mile wide in him.
Right.
And it was like, even though he was on autopilot, and believe me, I've drank, we've talked about this in the show, I've drank enough to where I've lost months of my life. I remember flashes of it like a dream, but it's not vivid. I'm like, God, what happened during those 3 months? It's almost like I was asleep during them, so I know what he's talking about. So, I mean, that's why that book interests me, but I understand how a lot of people would, without knowing the background of that book, would go, oh, this is fucking aliens, and it's a ship, and people getting psychic powers, and it's just stupid. I don't want to read this shit, and there's a drunk in here, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Now, you take that book, and they turn it into the horrible fucking miniseries. That was garbage. The Stand was garbage. That
was a big disappointment.
Yeah, there's, first of all, 4 episodes? No. If they were going to do The Stand again, they need to do it like a HBO or Showtime miniseries for like 3-4 seasons. That's the only way they could do it. But, and then his version of The Shining, the miniseries that came out, which was really faithful to the books. It had some really creepy moments in it, but ultimately it wasn't a Kubrick film. It was a made-for-TV Shining movie.
Yeah.
You can't fuck with Kubrick. I mean, it's like,
right.
There's no comparison there. So while his movies were getting better, all his TV shit was just getting worse and worse and more garbage. And I was like, okay, well, fuck it. I think I'm pretty much done with any Stephen King adaptations, unless one comes out, like a Frank Darabont one. When The Mist come out, I watched that. I think that was really it. I haven't even seen a lot of the movies that they've made since the mid to late 90s. Well, then I saw the trailer for It, and I was like, oh, it's fucking on, dude. Like, I've not been excited for a Stephen King movie like this since I was a teenager myself.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not afraid of clowns. And that scared the fuck out. It didn't scare the fuck out of me, but I was like, that makes me uncomfortable to watch this one part of this trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, don't run at me at the camera. What the fuck's wrong with this thing, man? I'm not cool with that.
and it's striking at the perfect time right now when everybody's still crazy for the next season of Stranger Things. And there was such an open influence of Stephen King on that series, even in the font that they chose for the title was very reminiscent of the fonts that were used in those early Stephen King books. Yeah. I remember looking at the font and I was like, I feel like I'm looking at an old Christine or Cujo book from the 80s from Stephen King. And there was little nods here and there, characters in the background reading a Stephen King book, little like Easter eggs from like, books of his with character names and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, that was half the fun of watching the show, was picking all that shit out. Right. And we're also at a time where we're very open about reboots, right? It used to be if you failed on a character or universe or something like that, it was toxic for like a decade or more. And now they're just like, oh, you didn't like that Spider-Man? Well, hold on, we got another one in the closet.
Yep.
And so there shouldn't be anything holding them back from redoing any of the failed TV miniseries or even some of the more successful ones, doing new takes on them. And also, I mean, what are studios looking for now? Universes, right? Mm-hmm. Transformers universe. The Ninja Turtles universe, the Marvel universe, the DC universe, the Power Rangers universe, all these the Universal Monsters universe now, the Godzilla and King Kong and all the what do you call the big monsters, kaiju universe, basically.
And I mean, if that's the case,
and he's built it, like he has. Stephen King has created, while he doesn't really tend to go back and revisit characters a whole lot, there's a whole universe that they exist in.
And that's why the Dark Tower series, for people who haven't read it, is the common thread in the Stephen King universe, because it includes almost, at some point in that 7-book series, it references almost every piece of his work.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's before the
thread that ties all of his work together.
Yeah, and sometimes it's even years before he releases a book. So you read a part and you go, "Oh, okay, that's weird." And then 4 years later, a book like Insomnia comes out, and you read it and you go, "Oh shit."
That's what he was referring to.
That was complete foreshadowing on his part. Holy fuck, he's actually thought this out. I mean, it's not just like it's not like second season Twin Peaks making it up as they go along type shit. It is, he actually sat down and plotted this out, at least to that extent. And now they got the Dark Tower movie coming out, which, if you haven't read the Dark Tower, there's no way I can discuss it without giving it away, so just spoilers for the ending of the book series at least. The Dark Tower series is a cycle. Mm-hmm. Roland Deschain, the gunslinger, is damned to repeat this cycle over and over until he gets it right.
He's Sisyphus and the impossible pushing the boulder up the mountain.
Exactly. And there was another writer that Stephen King quotes, I think multiple times in the Dark Tower series, that says hell is repetition. And it's a theme throughout the entire 7 books. And then once you get to the end, and the last sentence of the last book is the first sentence of the first book, you go, oh, I fucking get it now. And,
right.
you know, for me, I started reading that in 1986, 2004 is when I read the last book. So that was all those years I'd had to you know, think like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? So to me, I was like, that's it. But then as the farther away I've gotten from that ending, I'm like, it's kind of poetic. It makes sense, especially when you go back and read it, book 1, book 2, book 3, without years in between those books waiting for them to come out. But the Dark Tower series, the movie, is supposed to be the next cycle after the book cycle ends. So that's how come they've changed up things. They can rearrange the time frame of when certain things happen in the book to when certain things happen in this movie universe. They've obviously rearranged the gunslinger's race because they've made him a black guy. Idris Elba's playing him, who I love him as an actor, but at first I was like, okay, they just fucked up because a major part of the second book is the gunslinger being white because one of the other characters is black, and she's from our world during the racial struggle of like the late 50s and 60s, and she sees him as like this, you know, she's very standoffish with him because he looks like a fucking gunslinger from the 1800s and he's white. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So that was a big part of the second book. You make the gunslinger black, you make Roland Deschain, that's the gunslinger, black, you take out that entire thing. Well, this is how they're explaining it, kind of like they did with the new Star Trek. They reset the timeline with the new Star Trek by having what happened in that movie happen. So they're free to explore whatever they wanted, and they did. They had Cumberbatch as Khan. I don't understand how he's fucking of Asian descent, but whatever. I'll buy it, I guess. But so that movie's coming out, and it's funny because what you were talking about universes, I guess they're trying to release the Dark Tower movie and make it a movie, a season of a series on HBO or Showtime, another movie, another season, right, and then the last movie.
Right, the first true integration. I mean, something that even Marvel seems afraid to do.
Well, if you know, and speaking of foreshadowing, if you go watch the movie The Mist, the beginning of the movie, Aaron Eckhart, I think it's Aaron Eckhart, or whoever plays the main protagonist. Yeah, he's an artist, and he's painting the gunslinger in front of the doorway to the Dark Tower. Ah, and so I guess they're going to try to link these new generation of Stephen King movies coming out, like It, because it's a creature, and there's more than one of those creatures, and another creature of the same race as it appears in the Dark Tower series. So there's the connection between it right there. The turtle in It is a guardian of one of the beams. It's making no sense if you haven't read the book. Yeah. But the beams is what holds up the Dark Tower, and the turtle's one of the guardians. The turtle's a main guy that helps the Losers Club in the story It. Yeah. Fight It. I mean, so apparently they're keeping all this in there. I mean, they even have...
it's all there for them.
Even in the Dark Tower movie, I don't know if it's a new footage or it's footage from the Kubrick Shining movie, but the hotel is somehow featured in the Dark Tower movie. Huh. Like it's references it. Like it's like, oh shit, that's the Overlook. That's where The Shining happened. So you were without even me bringing it up, you hit the nail on the head. I think they're trying to start a whole Stephen King universe.
They should.
Like they are with Marvel and DC.
Yes, bring it.
Because even if you look at it, like look at Quentin Tarantino, all his movies are set in the same universe. And
yeah, where else are you going to get a pack of red apples?
Exactly. Thank you. You know, it's just like the View Askew verse for Kevin Smith. Where else are you going to get a pack of nails? Yeah, I'll take a pack of, you know. Yeah. And their logo is, you know, nails in an X-ray of lungs. You know, coffin nails. It's its own universe. So I mean, you know, nerdy shit like that would suck in a guy like me because I'm a fucking uber nerd for Stephen King and a lot of these stories. So I'm like, all right, you got me. But at the same time, I think with the Marvel universe, and they're trying it with DC, the jury's still out on that one for me.
They're trying. They're not trying hard enough. They need to experiment more, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, an effort is there. I think that people in Hollywood are going, one, the old guard who thought movies had to be one way is now dying off or retiring.
Their paradigm keeps being blown apart with each new blockbuster movie that comes out of nowhere. Who knew people would like this Deadpool if it was done right? And
so they're seeing this shit and they're going, let's give this a try. Let's roll the dice on this. Because these movies are not movies that they're. I mean, I think the Dark Tower movie, the budget's like somewhere north of $60 million. This is not a $10 million Stephen King movie that they hope makes $30 million. This is, they moved it from a February release to the middle of summer because they're hoping it's going to be one of their big blockbusters. And then you're going to have the Dark Tower movie drop, which is one in a series. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to have It drop. And it apparently the first movie is going to cover the childhood part of the book. The second movie is going to cover the adult part of the book.
There's going to be 2 movies?
Yeah, if you notice, you didn't see any of the Losers Club as adults in that trailer.
No, right. Oh my God. Oh shit. But not concurrently, right? We'll have to wait for the second installment, I imagine.
I imagine they're going to break it up like they did Lord of the Rings. It'll probably come out next summer.
Yeah, right.
Summer after the upcoming one. But, so I mean, there's a lot of cool things happening, and I kind of half-ass called it the summer of Stephen King because I can't remember a time since the Creep Show, Cat's Eye days when you would have 2 or 3 Stephen King movies released in a 6-month period. Right. But that was when they released Stephen King movies. It seemed like every 6 months anyways.
Right. And you also got movies like what was it? Sleepwalkers? Is that the one about the cat people? The mother and the son that were screwing?
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
God,
you wanted to forget about that one, didn't you?
Jesus, that was horrible. Yeah, she played the Borg Queen. I remember the mother played the Borg Queen in one of the Star Trek movies. That's the... Yeah, thanks for that. Now you've opened up that memory. Shit, I thought I poured enough booze on that to kill the brain cells around it.
Well, speaking of creepy memories, I had mentioned the Angel of Death earlier. Yes. Do you remember who the Angel of Death is? And I'm not talking about the Slayer song.
Are we talking about biblical lore?
No. This was, this was, a year after the Challenger explosion, so probably would remember this, too, if it came across your radar. But let's see. This was the guy who was Donald Harvey. And in 1987, he pleaded guilty to killing 37 people. He was a nurse in Cincinnati and also in Kentucky. Also worked for the Veterans Administration Hospital. And would just, turn off people's, what do you call the thing that breathes for you?
Life support, breathing machine, stuff like that.
Yes.
I do remember that now that you bring it. Yeah.
He would poison people. Well, he got caught when somebody was doing an autopsy on one of the bodies, and I think got a whiff of cyanide or one of the poisons that he had used. And this was, he's just a normal-looking dude, right? He doesn't look like some kind of creepy psycho killer. But he's the scariest kind of killer for me. I think this is one of the reasons why this stuck with me, is that he didn't have some mission, he didn't have a cause, he didn't have a bigger concept or a plan. It was, I had the power to take people's lives, and so I did.
Almost like a little kid tortures bugs just to see what happens.
Right.
He had that much disregard for human life. He was just like, I'm going to pull the plug just because I can and see what happens.
Well, I bring him up now because I think I had forgotten about this case entirely until I came across a story today that he actually died in prison. He confessed to his crimes in order to avoid the death penalty and has been living in prison. He was 64 years old. He was found the other day in his cell beaten near to death.
Oops.
Huh. Yeah. Wonder how that happened. I'm sure nobody saw nothing.
Yeah, he must have either owed somebody some money or he got hooked on some drugs and,
Or somebody just found out who the fuck he was and was like, oh shit, I knew one of them people.
Or
My grandma was from Cincinnati.
Some lifer with a questionable crime that doesn't get him respect came in and was like, I'm going to make my bones on this old man. It happens. I mean, it is prison. Let's be honest.
Sometimes it's just...
That's what happened with Dahmer. That guy got in there and he killed Dahmer, so he had a rep of don't fuck with me. Right. That's the only reason he killed Jeffrey Dahmer. He didn't care about that. Like, he didn't care that he ate people. He was just like, I just beat him to death so no one would fuck with me. That random.
Yeah.
But
so I don't know. I guess that the reason why this guy spooks me out so much is, again, like, it could just be totally random. Like, there's no reason for it. And sometimes there's very rarely a reason for people dying. Sometimes there is, and most times there just isn't. Shit just happens. And you like to think that there's certain things that you can control to avoid that happening to you. And also, while as much as you would be just as disgusted if this guy was like saying, God told him to that these people had to go and it was just their time. Okay, well, at least he had a cause or something, and I'm not religious and I don't tend to hang around with ultra religious people, so I'm safe, right? Or his dog told him to do it. Well, clearly that guy was mad, and all right, there's crazy people in the world. This is just a guy, this complete sociopath. It didn't even seem to register to him that what he was doing was really that bad. And I think it's the type of mentality that any person would have the hardest time wrapping their minds around it. Even the most hardcore of us could probably stop and contemplate what it must be like to be like a terrorist bomber. How you get to the point where you think it's reasonable to strap on a vest and blow yourself up in a marketplace. While I could never imagine myself getting to that point, I am capable. I do have enough imagination to say, okay, well, what if I was raised in this area and told this my whole life and had nothing else to lose? Could I put myself in that position if I was in their shoes? I don't even know this isn't even the same species to me. The angel of death guy, it's like he's not even human.
It's like, have you ever seen a movie called Funny Games?
No.
Okay,
I don't believe so. It kind of sounds familiar. Tell me about it.
Tim Roth, Naomi Campbell, or Naomi Watts. They're a family that these two.
Oh yeah.
Look like, yeah. Okay, so
it had wasn't the guy from Hedwig and the Angry Inch in that?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Well, the reason I said it's like that is because it's kind of like an adult horror story. It's not. There's no metaphysical, supernatural thing happening. It's a family that goes to their lake house, and these two kids who look like, upper crust, golf playing teens show up and they go, hey, we need some help. And the family starts helping them. And next thing you know, they look over and their dog's dead. And the guy goes, yeah, we did that. Now get in your house because we're going to kill you. And they end up torturing the family and they play fucked up games with them, giving them hope that they're going to live. Mm-hmm. And at one point, and this is what freaked the fuck out of most people that saw that movie when I've talked to them about it. At one point, the family is in the middle of just being fucked with and tortured with these games that these guys are playing with them. And they go, why us? Why are you doing this to us?
Right.
And real calmly, he just looks over and goes, because you were home. And that's so fucking chilling. There's no rhyme or reason. Yeah. It's just like this angel of death guy. Why is he doing this? Because I could. Because they were there. I don't have any animosity towards them, but He doesn't. It's like he doesn't even see him as a life form. He sees him as a plaything.
And I think there was a similar scene in that Keanu Reeves movie with the two chicks. Did you see that? I'm trying to remember what it was called. Where it's Keanu is just some kind of normal guy, nice place and everything. Gets wrapped up in two young girls that look innocent, and what could it hurt? And one thing leads to another where, they just ask for more. Oh, can we just stay here? We need to dry our clothes. We're wet. Anyway,
I've not seen that movie. I can't.
It's kind of similar. It actually, it's pretty much the same movie, only with the different twists that you would have on it that you would imagine with it being two young, sexy girls and Keanu Reeves. But,
well, I will say this. If you like those type of movies, check out Funny Games. Because
I've seen Funny Games.
No, I'm just saying. I'm saying to people listening.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Because the twist in that listeners, the twist in that movie. I'm pretty good at guessing around corners in those type of movies. I didn't even see the twist coming. And let's put it this way: when he showed it to the audience was like audibly and visibly shocked and like, "What the fuck just did that really happen? Was that supposed to happen?"
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, is this a joke? But, I mean, you just have to see it. I can't give it away. I can't, because if I even give you hints, I'm giving it away to the people who haven't seen it, and it's not fair to do that. So,
yeah.
But, yeah, that's, I mean. But
that was one of those big movies where everybody had seen it, and I would say, yeah, spoil it. But that's kind of one of those hidden gems that people will still come across and should be surprised by.
Yeah, it's like, I can't remember what I was listening to, but some podcast was talking about The Sixth Sense, and they were like, and Bruce Willis was dead. And the guy's like, dude, you just spoiled the movie. He goes, yeah, from a decade ago. If you don't know Bruce Willis was dead in The Sixth Sense and it's 2017.
Right. An award-winning. If you don't know it, you obviously avoided it purposely.
Yes, you've been in a coma. And either way, I'm sorry for you. But
I'm sorry. Is she in a coma?
There's
no way she wants that song.
I just called to say I love you. Yeah, okay. But there's kind of for a minute there was a glut of movies coming out of Hollywood that were kind of like that. I think The Strangers was one that had Liv Tyler in it.
Yep.
They remade that movie where the babysitter is like calling the cops. Someone's fucking with me. The call's coming from within the house. I can't remember what the name of that movie was.
Yeah, they're small cast, single set, relatively cheap films.
And if they're done right, it creep you the fuck out. I mean, I remember I'd already had the movie The Strangers ruined for me completely by the time I saw it, but I saw it with a girl who I was dating at the time who hadn't seen it and had no idea about what it was about. And her I was getting watching the movie vicariously through her because she was like, fuck no. Look behind her. I'm like, I know, I see him, Right. She's like, oh, this is too creepy. I can't handle this shit. And I'm like, that's because that's adult horror. It's random shit, bad shit, horrible shit happening to you for no reason. You can't stop it. You can't protect from it. You can't go to the doctor and diet it away. It's not heart disease. It's not colon cancer. It's just someone fucking with you because you were there in their line of sight.
Right.
And that is like, because as you grow up, your fears become more evolved as you get older. You don't really, well, for some of us, like I still got a few things that go back to my childhood. The Shining has made me, I hate walking into a bathroom and the shower curtain's closed because I'm thinking that dead bitch is in the bathtub behind that shower curtain. So I know it's totally irrational. It makes no sense, but it's just something that flashes in my head for a split second every time I walk in the bathroom and see it. But as I've gotten older, the shit I'm afraid of, and I imagine most people are, is like a heart attack out of nowhere, a stroke that leaves me where I can't take care of myself.
Right.
Cancer. And I'm going through chemo and no one's there to help me and I'm all alone during this. Like, your fears become more complex. But ultimately, the worst fear as an adult is just the fear of pure fuckery stumbling upon you. And you going, wait a minute, what the fuck did I this isn't even about whether I deserve it or not. This is just about I was standing in the wrong spot at the wrong time.
Right.
There's nothing I could have done to prevent this or to bring it on. Like, that's the ultimate adult horror right there, I believe, at least.
That's right. I've done everything right. I didn't ask for any trouble. And it just, asteroid came out of the sky and crushed me. What the fuck?
Exactly. How many times have we heard stories about, some guy walking down the street and there's construction above him and something falls and kills him, and you're just like, that's fucking horrible. But it's not like he could have avoided it. It's not like he was like, I won't walk under this ladder. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
right. Or a man walking alone downtown gets shot, and you're like, well, you should be careful.
Well, that's one of the things, having my dad be a truck driver, I never took for granted. When I drive, I never take for granted. I notice a lot of people do what's going on around them. And being on the road with him, I've seen so many accidents where people are just completely obeying the law. No one is breaking the law. No one's speeding. No one's running a red light. And for some reason, a car loses control, jumps the center line, head-on collision, and then there's a pile-up, and you're just watching it, and you go, what the fuck happened? And it turns out the guy blew a drive tire and couldn't hold on to the steering wheel or something.
Yeah.
And it's just shit that you can't.
And his Coke at the same time. One had to go.
But yeah, I mean,
the car lands on its side, and he's got the drink up, right? Like, yeah, saved it.
Real quick, have you ever seen those police chase videos where they're like chasing somebody and the car wrecks and it rolls over, and you see the person fly out of the window or something, and the car keeps rolling? Have you ever seen one of those?
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
There was one I was watching, and apparently the guy was a construction worker. I think he was drunk, and he had a couple DUIs before, so, hey, I'm going to outrun a cop. That's the brightest thing to do, right? Because I'm driving drunk, and they want to pull me over.
Sure.
He had his tools all scattered in the inside of his truck.
Oh, geez.
And when his truck hit the ditch and started rolling, you just saw he was strapped in, so he was okay, except for the tools beat the shit out of him, and you just saw tools flying all.
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
It was just insanity to watch this. I was like, oh, my God, dude, that's like karmic retribution right there. Like, you're going to survive this accident, but cold rolled die-cast metal is going to beat the shit out of you while you're doing it. It's like...
Right. So there's one more thing I wanted to say about Angel of Death guy, though, because you're spot on with that primal fear that we don't get over. There's another one in there too that's layered on top of it, though. It's the randomness combined with a person at their utmost vulnerable. So, like, some of my more irrational fears in life have been the fear of somebody coming up behind me while I'm pissing at a urinal and slamming my head into the wall, knocking me unconscious with my dick out and piss all over myself for other people to find me. Things like that. Like when, being preyed upon at your utmost vulnerable, like these people, some of them weren't even conscious, or maybe they were in a coma, or maybe they were just, resting. But regardless, they're in a hospital recovering from something. So I think that those are the two, and that's another one that you just don't ever ever outgrow, is the fear of vulnerability. And,
definitely.
And that others will prey upon it. I mean, even in the things that we carry with us in our day-to-day lives. I lose my job. I'm vulnerable. I can't have a place to live then, or take care of my kids, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, case in point is I was sitting here about a month and a half ago going, what am I going to do when my lease is up? Mm-hmm. Because I won't get into details, but I'm not going to be able to re-up it at this location. And boom, adult fear. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I got to move again. I just moved in here, blah, 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 blah. And then luckily I had something pop up and I was like, oh, okay. Now I no longer have to worry about it. It's taken care of. And I didn't realize how much that was weighing on me until it wasn't there.
Right. But that's fear that you can use. That's useful and reasonable fear. I also still carry some, I mean, not that I'm not able to overcome them, but I do still have somewhat of a fear of, well, looking out of the window at night because I saw The Howling in American Werewolf in London too many times. Or
and having like something pop up on the other side.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if there is something out there, like, I'm looking out the window to see, hey, is there something out there? Well, if it is, then it's probably going to pop up right in front of me as soon as I look out.
And on top of that, if it's at night and you got a light on inside, it can see you. You can't see it until it's right up on the window. That's the worst part. No, we used to play a game when I was a kid, me and my friends, and we'd be like, okay, who could freak each other out the most? And I really freaked my two buddies out when we were doing this one time. We were talking. I was like, okay, so imagine it's pitch black, and you come home, and you're all alone, and you can't see anything, and you're scared because we were kids when we were describing this, like maybe like 11, 12, something like that.
Yeah.
And you know how when you're a kid and you're scared and you reach around the corner feeling for the light switch, and they were like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "Now imagine this." Imagine a cold, dead hand lands on top of your hand, takes your hand, and puts it on the light switch for you. Like, no, I want you to see. Go ahead, turn the light on. And they were like, dude, fuck you. We're done playing this game with you. Why the fuck you say shit like that, man? Seriously? Who the fuck thinks of shit like that? It's all that Stephen King you read. I mean, seriously. I was like, hey, man, did I win the game? And they're like, man, we're not playing this shit no more. It's bullshit, man. But yeah, I understand, dude. Irrational fears that you carry in a child or from childhood into adulthood are something that like my ex-wife terrified of clowns. Terrified.
Yeah.
I mean, like, well, she's better now, but when we were together, if she saw a clown, like someone dressed up as a clown, she would hit the ground in the fetal position, cover her face, and start crying. I'm not
really?
joking. That visceral of a reaction. Like, I thought she was exaggerating.
I had a friend who couldn't deal with midgets.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, I hate little people. It was just like, they had just like this irrational gut feeling, this like shiver in the spine. It sounds horrible to say, but it's just happened.
I have seen people like that. I've never been a friend with a person like that, but I've seen people like that where there's like, this little person, the preferred nomenclature these days, I guess. There's a little person in a room, and they're on the other side of the room, and they're
just
kind of like
pale.
Yeah, and they're just like up against the wall, trying to become part of the wall with their like peripheral vision out of the corner of their eye, keeping an eye on this guy wherever he goes. And I'm like,
it's moving.
Like, dude, seriously? He ain't gonna fuck with you,
right?
But yeah, I thought my ex-wife was exaggerating it until we went to Halloween Horror Nights at Cedar Point, and we were in line to go through one of their haunted houses, and they have people dressed up as different, Halloween costumes. Well, this dude was dressed up as a clown, and he come up and he was like creeping up behind her, and he looked at me and he put his finger to his lips and went, shh. And I was like, oh, dude, this is kind of creepy to me, dude. I just had a clown go, shh. Like, no, I don't ever want to hear a clown tell me be quiet. And then he like, and he put his hands on her shoulders, and she turned around, saw him, screamed, took a swing at him,
Ooh.
And then like ran, and like, dude, I'm not joking, like makeup ruined, sobbing, uncontrollably, snot bubble, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, you're not joking. You were honestly,
yeah.
You were terrified of clowns. I'm like, holy shit. I mean, heights I would get. Spiders, snakes, maybe. Like, I don't want
things
them around.
That could actually hurt you, yeah.
But a clown, I'm like, it's just a dude in makeup. And she's like, but why are they wearing makeup? What are they trying to hide? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. It's the most random shit in my mind. I don't know why you're scared of it. But I think, going real quick, just to bring it back, I think she saw it when she was younger, and that's what really did it. You know, Tim Curry. She didn't. When I saw Tim Curry as it, I saw Frankenfurter dressed up as a clown.
Right.
I think she just saw Tim Curry as it because she doesn't even like Tim Curry outside of the makeup to this day. So I think that's part of that.
I was afraid of the clown doll because of Poltergeist.
That too. She did tell me that when she saw that when she was like 6 or 7, her parents let her watch it, and that did it for her. She's like that. That
movie probably freaked me out more than any movie that I can remember.
Well, do you remember the movie called The Game with Michael Douglas? And oh shit!
I thought I've seen all of Michael Douglas's movies.
It's a David Fincher movie.
No. I remember that one.
Remember, he's coming home from work.
They did a Black Mirror that was much like that.
Okay, yeah, and he was coming home from work, and there was the clown in the middle, like the doll in the middle of the road.
Yep.
And he oh my god, dude! Yeah, she saw that movie over with. She's like, nope. She got up and she walked out of the room. I'm like, honey, I'll fast forward it. It's only like 5 minutes. I don't trust this movie. They're gonna at any moment a clown could jump out. I'm like, oh my god, we're seriously terrified of this shit. I guarantee you, I've seen it, honey. It's only 5 minutes. I don't trust you. I don't trust this movie. Okay, all right. Oh god, and I wonder why I got divorced. I don't trust you. I don't trust this movie. See,
trust issues.
It's not all on my end. Some of it was on her end.
Well, you had mentioned possibly moving earlier. I'm starting my move tomorrow. My car is actually packed up and ready to start. And it's getting late here, so I got to wrap this one up for tonight.
I'll just say this. I don't envy you, man. I hate moving.
Yeah. I travel reasonably slim. Most of it's going to be one truck, honestly. But yeah. So I guess this is where we say that people should follow us on Twitter. Or
follow us on Twitter and
Facebook.
Instagram. Find us on Stitcher Radio, on iTunes. If you do find us on iTunes and you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a review, rate us. Yep. If you really like what you hear, 5 stars, share us, by any social media method.
You can support us by clicking on the Amazon banner through our website. Amazon will give us a couple shekels our way.
Yeah, definitely. Apparently from other podcasts that if enough people do that, it does start to add up. So yeah.
It all makes a difference. More listeners, a little bit of donation, it all helps. You can donate directly on the Christopher Media page. You can follow our live stream. There's a link on that on the Christopher Media page where you can hear the 3 most recent episodes. And you can also find all the other shows that we do, as well as Unregimented. I do with Chris and Rob, The Weedsman. Rob has started a wrestling podcast that you can find on there.
Yep, World Championship Radio. I was going to mention that. That's our newest one.
At the Beer Nuts podcast that we're going to be recording tomorrow night.
We got the sports one, Sporgy.
Yeah, that's right. You do Sporgy with you and
Chris and the Iceman.
Yep.
So yeah. Oh, and the Ugly Club and Projection Booth, which are both, I believe, movie podcasts.
Yes.
So
very good one. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for your support. Share and tell a friend, and we will see you next week.
All right, later, guys.
If you like this show, please tell a friend. Please follow us on Twitter and like and share us on Facebook by searching for Christopher Media. You can subscribe to all ChristopherMedia.net shows for free on ChristopherMedia.net. Please make sure to rate and comment on all your favorite Christopher Media shows. Thank you in advance for supporting Christopher Media by clicking on the PayPal button and by clicking through to all the sponsors who support ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net, and thank you for listening. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.